You're listening to the Deep Purple Podcast, a fan podcast about one of the most legendary bands of all time, Deep Purple. We take a look at the music, history, and people behind the band Deep Purple and beyond. Welcome to the Deep Purple Podcast, the first and only podcast devoted to one of the greatest bands in rock history, Deep Purple. Today's episode is episode number 158, the 3-year interview. And coming to you from the spring training suburbs of Chicago, I'm your host, Nathan Beaudry.
And coming to you from the suburbs of Providence, I'm your co-host, John Meatloaf Matola.
And coming to you from the laughingly quotable streets of Las Vegas, I am Scott Haskin.
All right, Scott, thanks for joining us this week.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's always fun to come on the show.
Yeah, so John and I are going to be interviewed today using your questions and his, and we figured why not get the best interviewer in the business on the show to do it.
I'll log out if you want to bring him on.
Yeah, John, if you don't mind, he'll be on the stream any second now. But yeah, we appreciate it. Appreciate you joining us this week, doing something a little different. But before we do that, what's so quotable about the streets of Las Vegas?
Well, I walk down the strip about twice a week just to get out of the house, get some fresh air. And I think I'm the only local that actually loves the strip. And, the things that you hear people say, it's just amazing. And the later in the night it gets, the drugs kick in, the alcohol kicks in, the exhaustion kicks in, and people get pretty loopy and say some pretty crazy things here. So it's always a good time walking down the strip.
Do you write them down? Do you have like a little file on your phone where you write them down? Or?
I actually do. Yeah. I'm just finishing up my third book that I'm releasing called What Happened in Vegas, where I released 450 quotes that I actually heard people say, and just with some random pictures that are just as random as the quotes. And just finishing up the third one. I'm 5 quotes away from finishing the third and final book.
That's right. I remember seeing you post something about that, and that's very interesting. And do you have to give author credit? Do you have to say Scott Haskin and assorted co-writers?
No, I just have a blanket endorsement policy from everybody that says anything on the strip. They say it out in public, so if anybody can prove what they said, I'd love to know. Most of them aren't going to remember what they said, or
they'll be like, "Oh, that's." They're reading the book, going, "That's hilarious," not knowing that they said it.
Exactly.
So, John, did you eat meatloaf? Listen to meatloaf? Did you listen to the food meatloaf? Like, what's going on?
I think that my belches pre-show answer that question.
Okay. Belch switch will be employed tonight.
I had some meatloaf before the show.
My son just got
damn tasty.
Good.
My son, well, both my sons. Oh, actually, all 3 of my children are starting baseball this week, so they all took them all out in an absolutely hellish experience to buy them all baseball gloves yesterday. And my son was like, "Hey, let's play catch." And I looked at my phone, and I was like, "Oh, I got to record in a few minutes." So we went and did like 15 minutes of playing catch outside. So I'm in spring training over here, even though it's way too cold outside and it's nasty. But
isn't it funny? You almost said, "I looked at my watch," and it's weird that that's kind of an antiquated term now.
People will be like, "Who's this old man?" Yeah, I looked at my watch. I looked at my chronometer and it said, I was about to record my show.
According to my sundial.
But I mean, that's like, could you think about how stupid that would have sounded like 30 years ago? It's like, I looked at my watch, and if somebody went, he means his phone.
Right.
What? Like, you don't look at your phone to tell the time, you dink.
Yeah, what's wrong with this guy?
With your long curly cord.
So hey, if you want to help support, we're doing this today in kind of a sort of self-referential look at the show after 3 years. This is our 3-year anniversary when this comes out, and to mostly focus on your questions about the show. So there'll be a lot of talk in this episode about the show, behind the scenes, your questions, what you're interested in, and how the show is made. But of course, there'll be a lot of Deep Purple related stuff thrown in throughout that. So if this is your first time listening, there might be an episode regarding some music that might be a better entry point. But if you're interested in learning some behind the scenes stuff about me and John, about the show, then check it out. And we had done our first episode ever, which I haven't listened back to. Our hope sort of one day replace that, or at least bump it and put audio in front of it that was a little bit more explanatory and kind of introductory for people who wanted to know what the show was about. And that was kind of how this started out, but then it kind of turned into just hey, it's 3 years, let's talk about the show itself. So hey, if you want to help support the show, there's a few ways you can do it. One is leaving us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts, and if you do that, the Flexitone the Flexitone will be brought out. I got my custom dampers in there. The Flexitone will be brought out and sounded off in your honor for writing a review. So we'd appreciate that. You can buy merch at our Etsy store. You can also become a patron on Patreon or PayPal for as little as $1 a month. You can help support the show, help us buy albums to review, buy equipment that we need, whatever it is, buy tickets for a show, whatever it may be. And then you can also send us money on Cash App using $DP pod, DPPOD, if you want to send money directly that way. So speaking of patrons, heyo, we would like to welcome our newest patron, Michael Bagford.
Heyo.
You were late on the heyo.
I saw your eyes kind of dart back and forth, like, where is he?
I was waiting for the hey. Yeah, so if this is your first episode, I apologize. The heyo usually comes much earlier than that. Really throws everything off. So Michael Bagford, he's joining us at the $5.99 nice price tier.
Yeah.
He writes and says, "Hi, Nathan, John, and all the podcast listeners out there. I'm Michael Bagford, and I have been binging on this show for the last couple of months. Currently, I'm up to episode number 46. I don't remember what that one was. I discovered this show after another podcast I listened to, Rock Solid, who did an episode on Deep Purple recently. It reignited a passion to listen to the band again. I saw this podcast and was happy to know you covered all the many bands and artists that are part of the Purple family tree. I'm so happy that there are detailed episodes on Captain Beyond discography. Anyway, keep up the great work. I'm enjoying the podcast a lot so far." Well, thank you, Michael. Really appreciate that. And not to be undone, heyo!
Heyo.
John Kynes joins us at the $3 Nobody's Perfect tier, and we had quite a conversation via Instagram. So just say that John is very into Deep Purple. I might have more to say on the next episode, but him and his wife says they are rabid Deep Purple fans. Didn't really write an official entry email. Said he loves the podcast. He says one thing we might want to discover is setting up a Patreon for people who donate to the show, which I'm sorry, a Discord for the people who are on the Patreon, which I'd thought of doing. I just didn't know if there'd be any interest. So let us know what you think. I might just set it up anyway, because it won't really cost anything to set up, but that'd be a private channel where everyone could kind of talk, and everyone that's patrons. And then he said him and his wife are both big Deep Purple fans. He is his wife is a guitarist, and he is a keyboard player. And so they got this new dog. So I'll show you, cute little dog. And they couldn't agree on what to name it, Ritchie Blackmore or John Lord. So they settled with Lord Blackmore for the dog. So
I like it.
Good
Lord
choice.
Lord is a great thing to attribute to a dog. I think that's pretty great.
I thought you were going to say he was the drummer.
the dog.
Yeah.
So speaking of patrons, we want to thank our executive level patrons at the $25 Uncommon Man tier. We have Ovis Nakfi at the $21.12 Long Live Rock and Roll tier, Richard Fusey at the £10 tier, Dr. Jill Brees at the Turn It Up to $11 tier, Clay Wambacher, Frank Thielgard Mortensen, Alan Ain't Too Proud to Beg, and Mikkel Steen. And at the $10 Someone Came tier, Ryan M, Jeff Bryce, Gerald Kelly, Victor Campos, Better Call Saul Evans, and Kev Roberts and his wonderful children, Matthew, Gareth, and Sarah. Thank you so much for all of you who have supported the show. You might notice a little painting behind me. Do you see that there? A little painting of that was sent in to us by patron Adrian Hernandez. Painted that picture of the perfect strangers. Yeah, you got Roger, Richie, Ian, John, and little Ian back there. Very cool picture. So I'll put a picture in the show notes of that I took of it. But very nice of Adrian to send that over here. I had it hanging above the diffuser up there, but you couldn't see it, so I put it out front and center for everyone to check out.
I was going to comment on that.
When I saw that at first, I thought it was just a Perfect Strangers picture. I didn't know it was a drawing or a painting or anything.
Yeah, it did a nice job getting like the kind of like the posterized look to it. Looks great.
Yeah, I was going to comment on that earlier, that it was cool that you brought out the Perfect Strangers poster, but it's not.
Nope. It's a painting. Also, we're gonna need a theme song for this, I think. But next, postcards from the edge of Connecticut. Another postcard. This postcard came in the mail today. Look at that.
Whoa.
It's the Deep Purple Podcast logo. This handsome postcard. It says, Nate, thank you to both John and you for having myself a co-host of the DPP for episode number 152. It was a lot of fun. Butters, Peter. And then I got a bunch of stuff in the mail today. I also got this package in the mail. So I said, what's this? As I noticed, the return address was also from Peter Gardeau. And what it is, here we go. It says, Nate, have a fun time at the post office, Pete. And it's a stack of Deep Purple Podcast postcards that he made. So it says, you could make some more for the Etsy store, he says. And he included 2 stamps and a bunch of postcards. So look at that. So yeah, I have to start sending these
really
out.
Cool. Yeah.
I'll just send them back to Peter one by one. My only postcard correspondence in the last 25 years. All right. So yeah, this episode, as I said earlier, is really we're going to hand over the reins to Scott in a minute. We solicited a bunch of questions from listeners and patrons and followers on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, email, you name it. So yeah, just wanted to kind of get a sense from everybody about what their questions were about the show. If they had any about what makes the show go. And yeah, with that, I guess we can we'll break partway through to go through some more patrons. But Scott, do you have a way that you want to handle this? You're in control now.
This is good.
Boy.
You're in control of the Deep Purple Podcast.
Tenting his fingers.
Mr. Burns style. First of all, congratulations to you guys. 3 years is a huge accomplishment. A lot of podcasts, I wouldn't think that this was true, but it actually is. A lot of podcasts do not make it past the first 10 episodes. People start out really ambitious. They don't realize how much work actually goes into it to make a good quality show. Did you guys think in the beginning that you'd still be doing this at this point? Or were you like, well, we'll just see? Let's see. John, what do you think?
I had no idea, because we started this up so fast. I never saw it growing into what it is today. That Nate, not only that, Nate would have us on this, this weekly schedule. Like, I don't even remember how we came up with it. The weekly schedule, the time, all the different people that we met, and the bits and the segments. I think they all just kind of, everything just happened on its own organically. So yeah, I think there was just the planning kind of started after there was some momentum, I think. But no, I had no idea how long we were going to do this for. We were just like, yeah, we're going to do it. And we just kept doing it. I remember I think I remember the first time, Nate, we were just like, how do we know that if we get any listeners? Or we had no idea how any of this worked. Yeah. But Nate being computer savvy, you put everything together and put it out there, and we're like, all right, let's see who finds it. And
well, I already had a recording studio set up in my basement, which I used for music, and now I nearly never use for music. I mostly use for this. So I knew all about that part. That was nothing. Recording the show is a piece of cake. What kind of was daunting to me was setting up the podcast. I just didn't know how to do it. And then when I found out how to do it, I was like, wow, that's really easy. That kind of been held. I'd always had this idea, wouldn't it be cool to do a podcast? with no, I mean, I knew it must be very easy because everybody has a podcast, but I didn't realize how easy it was to get to. And then once it got going, it was just like, yeah, I don't remember how it fell into the rhythm it is now, where we pretty much usually record on the same time every week and kind of get into that rhythm. And then I'll, find some time to edit throughout the week. But yeah, I don't know if I ever had any ideas of how long it would last. I think I had hoped it would go on for a while. And I know the idea going into it was, hey, even if nobody listens, wouldn't it be fun to get together once a week with John and talk about Deep Purple? Because I don't know anybody else that would want to talk to me about Deep Purple. And we thought that would be fun. And it comes out that there's a lot of people that want to not only listen to a podcast about Deep Purple, but listen to us talk about Deep Purple, even if we know way less than they do, which we usually do. So
But though, what's interesting is I always felt in school, and I'm a little bit older than you guys, but I always felt like I was the only one in my entire high school that even knew who Deep Purple was, let alone, because everybody was wearing Iron Maiden jackets. Metallica was really getting big at the time, and Master of Puppets had just come out. And I'm just thinking, I'm literally the only person in this school who listens to Deep Purple, which was probably not actually true. But you're right. Like you kind of feel like who else knows who this band is? They're only one of the top selling bands in all of history, but yet we all kind of felt like kind of isolated. It's a really weird feeling.
And in America, much more so. Like they just don't have the traction here that they do in Europe or throughout the rest of the world. So it was, yeah, I don't remember. There was nobody. I mean, John and I didn't even go to the same high school. We weren't even in the same grade. So John and our friend Paul were like the only two people that I knew during high school, but not like at high school.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, let's now, Michael Bagford is your newest patron, is he not? Isn't that who you said a few minutes ago?
Yes.
Yeah. He wrote in a question. So let's start with him. So Nate says, apologies in advance if this question has already been asked or added to the show. If you were going to cover an album that's not really in the Deep Purple family, what album would it be?
For me, there's I guess if it depends if John is involved. I would really like to do Megadeth Rust in Peace. I think because we both would really enjoy the hell out of that episode. Has nothing to do with Deep Purple, but I think it was a really foundational album for us, and it's just, to me, it's the greatest heavy metal album of all time.
I would say, except for possibly playing some of the same festivals, I can't think of any connections between Megadeth and Deep Purple at all.
Other than that, I'm sure Deep Purple had some sort of influence on members of the band, but other than that, yeah, there's no connections that I'm sure there's some connection, some really tenuous connection out there, but no, nothing enough that we could get away with putting it on the show as a regular episode.
Right. Yeah. How about you, John?
I don't know. I kind of thought about it, and it's like every time I thought of one, I'm like, oh no, wait, they're connected somehow.
Yeah, that's the problem.
I'm like, damn it, like Diary of a Madman. No, wait, because there's some kind of like 6 degrees of separation or whatever. But I thought that like the first Motley Crue album would be pretty wild. I mean, I loved that one when I was a kid. And, that was, kind of the other side of the musical spectrum for me. I always like, I'd spent, hours looking at those early photos of them, first couple of albums. So I always liked that one the best, even though they always called it a glorified demo. But
I think both of those albums would be a lot of fun to review.
That would be great.
Yeah.
Maybe there's another show that you could do that on. I wonder too, you think about, is there any band that you could legitimately say was not influenced one way or another by at least one of the big four bands? I mean, growing up, these were bands that were staples on the radio. You'd be hard pressed to say that they didn't have some influence, even if it was a minor one. Unless you're Kingdom Come, who just flat out refused to admit they ever heard Led Zeppelin and then sounded exactly like Led Zeppelin.
It's like, yeah, Yngwie, like lately. Oh no, Ritchie Blackmore didn't have any influence on me. It's like, what about all these pictures of? What about all these interviews where he said he was like main influence, and pictures with you with your arm around him and everything. No, I never heard of the guy really.
Yeah, I think he just
Pish
has a
posh.
dartboard that says yes on one side and no on the other, and whatever it hits, that's whether Ritchie had influence on him that day.
Yeah, I'm saying no today.
From a great fan of the show, Fielding Fowler, is there another genre of music or artist that you would enjoy doing, like that it would surprise people that you liked? I think Nate, you know who your answer is. I'll start with John.
So I don't know. I think most people would probably be, I mean, that maybe listen to the show, think that house music or like dance music is something that I've really enjoyed over the years. That didn't come until later. Like I started out being like a teenage metalhead, but then when I was old enough to go out and go to bars and clubs and stuff, some of the clubs would play house music, and I always kind of like found that connection between that and like heavy metal, which was kind of, not a lot of people thought it was obvious, but I mean, you had the beats that were really like, built out. You had the 4 on the floor beat, which we know now, just the pulsating bass, like the music like building on each other, like a lot of the synthesizers and like the electronic stuff was just really heavy, almost like a, John Lord-esque in a way. Just a lot of that stuff. I'm like, wow, this is like really heavy, and like people are going berserk over it. So I'm like, I found a lot of value and good times in it.
That's interesting. And for a lot of our musician friends that are familiar with that style of music, about 9 out of every 10 songs has some kind of synthesizer sidechain compressed to take the attack off and give a really bizarre sound. I wouldn't have thought of you as a club guy. That is interesting.
You didn't see the nightclub Matola face with the gelled back hair and the puka shell necklace.
John Nightclub Matola. Yeah, the early 2000s.
Button 3 buttons down. The pictures are out there, folks.
Oh, actually, you're not too far off. The early 2000s. I had the spiky hair with the tips.
Wow.
Stood out in the lines, like, with my friends and like, tank tops and shit in like the middle of winter, like, let us in. I had the puka shells, like it was awful.
Even if I didn't ask Nate, I think that Fielding has a great answer to his question right there. How about you, Nate? What would surprise people that you like?
Well, it probably wouldn't surprise you guys, but yeah, I think most people would be surprised just from listening to the show that I am a huge fan of late 80s, early 90s hip hop in particular, particularly the East Coast stuff. Very much into the stuff that was going on in New York around that time. De La Soul, Tribe Called Quest, Leaders of the New School, all that sort of stuff. Really love it. I have most albums in that genre, and I love that. And I like hip hop outside of those circles too. Hip hop and rap, and the distinction between the two is up to your own observations. But yeah, I really love that stuff. I love those. I think it's just vocally what they do rhythmically just always really appealed to me. And I won't say always, but like I think I liked it growing up in the 80s to a point. Like I remember my same cousin who sadly passed away a number of years ago. When I would go visit him for the summer at his house, he'd always have some new music for me. And one summer I went there and he had the Fat Boys Are Back, that album. And I just remember just being like, this is just so much, this is so cool, this is so much fun. And we'd listen to that, and then we'd go out and just hang out outside listening to the album, and just had a great time. Same cousin that also introduced me to Metallica and gave me a copy of Master of Puppets, which at that time was the most recent Metallica album. So same cousin kind of introduced me to both ends of the spectrum there, which was really, really cool. But yeah, I really always enjoyed that style of music. Then when I got introduced to Metallica and I had to have the jean jacket with the patches on, I had to kind of renounce that. I couldn't admit to anybody, no, yeah, that stuff sucks. It's just talking over music, and metal is the way to go. And then, you just eventually get a point like, I don't give a shit what anybody thinks. I like it, so who cares?
Did you get your jean jacket painted with an album cover on the back?
I did not go that far. I just had a bunch of different back patches, and I wish I could remember all the ones that I had.
Oh yeah. Back patches.
All the back patches.
Mhm.
I probably had my mom sew them on. How cool is that? Mom, can you? Mom, I need to be really badass. Can you sew another one onto the back? My mom was really good at sewing, so.
I totally did that. Because I would try and I'd try and iron them on, but the glue would never stick. So I'm like, Ma, could you sew on this like this Motley Crue patch?
And your
you
mom
sew
was
on this
probably-
Ozzy patch?
Yeah. Probably had an Ozzy one. I definitely had a Metallica one because I remember like I was in 7th grade and one of the 9th graders challenging me on Metallica. I bet you don't even know any songs besides blah 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 or whatever. And it's just, that kind of whole, trying to suss out if somebody's a poser or not, it's so lame.
I'm glad we still don't do that kind of stuff on Twitter. I had
Yeah, right.
I had a jean jacket that I painted Deep Purple and Rock on the back. And then
Nice.
on the sleeves, I had some of those permanent paint markers, and I just started writing all the band names. I couldn't draw the logos properly, so I just started writing like every band name that I liked. Then I did a jacket of In the Court of the Crimson King, that album cover, and then the third one I did was the Misfits Crimson Ghost, which is always funny to me because it's in black and white. But it's the Crimson Ghost. So yeah, but the Deep Purple and Rock one, that was a lot of fun. I had a good time painting that. It looked terrible. I mean, I was not skilled in any way, but
were they just little gray smiley faces?
Yeah, it was just like a white lump with 5 smiley faces on it.
I had this pair of jeans when I was in high school, and they were like my yard work jeans or whatever, before I had a job. And so they naturally wore holes like in the knees and on the legs and everything. And that's, then I started wearing them because it was like, it looked cool, because I wanted those distressed before distressing became a thing. And so I had a black marker and I wrote Ozzy across my thigh, the Ozzy logo, like on the jeans, and the Ozzy logo was easy to do because it was just like the little kind of the lines through the Z and everything like that. And I remember one time one of my uncles came over and he saw it and he pointed at my pants. He goes, "Hey, what about Harriet?"
Totally killed your whole high from doing that.
And I'm like, it's not the same Ozzy, Uncle Bill. It's a different one. You know what you're talking about.
Herb made that same comment to me when I was wearing an Aussie t-shirt. It's an Italian uncle thing.
Yeah. Same generation, I'm sure.
Oh, that's awesome. I love it. From Flight of the Rat Bat Blue Light. I love that name. I know you guys both play music, but I don't think I caught the exact episode where you describe what your main instruments are. Nate, what do you play?
My main instrument, I guess, was bass. I started on bass. I started to learn bass, and only because our friend Scott played drums and his brother played guitar. So I said, well, I guess I should learn how to play bass. And then, with the idea that like, oh, then we'd have a band, and the three of us were never in a band together. But I learned how to play a bass, and then then I learned guitar from that. I taught myself piano. So I took bass and guitar lessons. I learned piano just from taking like what I knew from guitar and translating it. So like I'm sure my technique is garbage. And my buddy Scott is a really good drummer, and he taught me, enough to get by on the drums. I can hold a regular beat, but I'm definitely not super proficient. So those are probably the main instruments that I played. I played bass in several bands, guitar in a band, but yeah, that was as far as playing in bands, that just bass and guitar.
Now, for those of you guys listening who don't follow Nate on Instagram, every January, I don't know how he does it because I don't think he has any time to do anything anyway, but he somehow manages to put out a little short spurt of a song every day for the January Songwriting Challenge. Really, really talented composer, Nate. I'm always enjoying the stuff that you do, and I will always look forward to January just for that reason.
Hey, thanks. I appreciate that.
Otherwise, it's just kind of a shitty month.
Yeah, it is. Usually I'm at the end of December, I'm going, oh no, I got to do the January thing again. That means I'm getting like a half hour less sleep a day, basically.
Right. You don't have to do it, but I'm glad that you do.
Yeah. It's all about the discipline of it. It's, I think it's one of those things like people say that, if you say you make time for the things that you want to do, and it's easy to say, I don't have time to do something, but probably for the most part, that means you don't want to do it. There's you can, if you really want to do like John or me, every single week we could say, oh, I'm too busy to record this week, and we could be telling the truth.
Mhm.
But if we want to make it the commitment and have the discipline to do it, we do it. And there's even been some weeks where both of us are like, I know there's been weeks where like one of us is, like probably hoping the other one's going to say I can't do it this week because you don't want to do it. But I know every time that's ever happened to us, like, like just we're in a crappy mood, I had a bad day at work, whatever it is. Every time we've done that, by the end of the episode, we're really glad we did, and we feel in a better mood and are happy that we did it. So you gotta, it's like anything, you gotta force yourself to start, and when you do, you're glad you did.
Absolutely. What about you, John?
Definitely.
What do you play?
So I started off playing piano. I had piano lessons when I was a kid. I was actually pretty good. Could play a lot of pieces by heart. I learned it from the sheet music. So I learned those basics when I was in elementary school, but then didn't really continue after that because, of course, I thought guitar was more cool. So I picked up one of those and had this nylon string acoustic,
I love that
which yeah, you guys were like so impressed by it because that was my acoustic guitar for a while. And I had some guitar lessons, but I mostly, like, once I got an electric guitar, like I just taught myself on that. And then much like, Nate would, had played certain instruments due to necessity. Like I kind of translated what I knew from guitar to bass. So if we ever did any recording or anything like that, I would just be like I could get by. I didn't know how to be really a great bass player. I know a few tricks or whatever, but I could, hold down a beat, or I could do like a really good disco beat or something. Just play the octaves and be like, yeah, baby. But yeah, that's pretty much it. And then some singing when I had to, but I never took any lessons. I just did it.
Very cool. I think we're all still hoping that there's going to be someday an episode where you guys share something that you recorded together. I know that's been brought up a couple times. So much like Coverdale tweets too, we're expecting someday that is going to happen.
That's like, yeah, the be careful what you wish for category.
Yeah.
Well, as far as
Those
I
are
know,
pretty
Nate
good.
has control over all those. You
Yeah, I do. I have
those
all the
tapes.
official licensing rights to all of that because I'm the only one that has the copies of the tapes.
Yeah,
right?
Nate has the copies. Yeah.
That will do it. Now, I'm going to just apologize to everyone whose name I do not pronounce correctly. I can't even pronounce English names correctly half the time.
I can tell what name you're getting to.
Is it Oyvind?
It's Ivan Fieldbu.
Ah, there you go. Okay.
As far as I know, maybe I've been pronouncing it wrong the whole time.
And the thing is, like, I know that most people around the world, they understand that we're probably not going to know how to pronounce their name.
They understand that Americans are dumb and we
yes,
can't pronounce things.
Completely uncultured. But
Yes.
I still feel bad just the same for not knowing how to pronounce a name that I wouldn't have any reason to know how to pronounce.
Well, name's very personal, and I always reach out to, when we get like a new patron or somebody on the show, if I'm going to read something, I always reach out to just be like, can you tell me how to pronounce? I want to make sure first of all, I try to guess, because I want to just be like, look, we're not all really stupid. Maybe I could guess correctly. Sometimes I'm right, sometimes I'm wrong, but I want to make sure that we're pronouncing people's names right, because it's like somebody's decided to listen to our show and give us money. The least we can do is pronounce their name correctly.
Absolutely.
True.
I like the people on Facebook that in their profile they do how to pronounce my name.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times I still don't get it, but at least they're trying. So when you started listening to Deep Purple, what other bands did you listen to at that particular time? Was it predominantly metal bands? Let's start with you, Nate.
Probably, like, I think I went into like a big Metallica phase, after my cousin introduced me to them, and then Injustice for All came out, and I got that, and then I guess, yeah, that came out before Rust in Peace. So I guess then I got into Rust in Peace, and then I started to kind of go a little bit backwards. I started to get a little bit more back into the Beatles, and from my earlier childhood. I'm trying to think of bands like my dad got me that really cool Pink Floyd box set when it came out, the black one with the prism on, when you put all the CDs. The side I had the prism on it, so he got me that, like, out of the blue. I don't even think I had asked for it, but I got that, and I just was like in love with it and listened to that nonstop. bands like Infectious Grooves and Ozzy, all sorts, like stuff like that. Like it was, yeah, it wasn't a lot of the things I wasn't really into was honestly like the 87 White Snakes and the glam stuff, which John will probably have a different answer for, but I wasn't so into that like hair metal style stuff. But I was really into, with some exceptions. I loved that. I also loved that first Motley Crue album. So yeah, I think you go through these, like when you're that age, talking about being whatever 12, 13, you start you start taking some shots at different bands. I was really into Def Leppard for a little while, so you kind of taking some shots at bands and seeing what interests you, and then it's eventually just kind of you ping pong back and forth along this corridor and figure out what you really like. So those were the bands I would think I was listening to when Deep Purple popped up for me.
And those would all make sense genre wise too. They're all they're not directly related, but they're very similar bands from that similar time. John, what about you?
I think that I mean, I started off listening to bands that were, I guess you could say like contemporary at the time. Like, I mean, for glam metal bands, because I was really, into that whole thing. Like I just, always loved theatrical rock. And I actually didn't start with Kiss. Like at the time I wanted to get into music. Like I can't remember, like have this like recollection of wanting to get into music. And my mom was very religious at the time. So she's like, well, yeah, you could pick out something, from like the religious bookstore or whatever, and lo and behold, Striper was in there, and
There you go.
they looked the part. So I'm just like, I'm buying To Hell with the Devil, and actually, like, I mean, it was, I loved it then, and then I denounced it. And I'm just like, all right, this is garbage because it's like Christian rock. But I mean, I listened back to it, and there's a lot of good stuff there. They're like great musicians. They had some great songs. So I regret nothing. But then I was like able to, like any other teenager, like branch out. And like my first big glam band was like Poison, because they were all over MTV. And I'm just like, all right, they got the look, everything. And that, kind of spiraled out into like, Rat, Motley Crue. So all like the, the LA glam bands. And at one point when I started like picking up, magazines and watching MTV, I started to look backwards because, you'd see a lot of these bands would talk about their influences or, where they came from. And so of course, like Black Sabbath, Deep Purple, Led Zeppelin, all those came up. And like for the life of me, I can't remember. It might have been, I mean, I'm just going to guess because like I remember in a lot of magazines that I read that like Ronnie James Dio was in pictures with Ritchie Blackmore, and Rainbow obviously spawned from Deep Purple. So I'm just like, all right, I heard Deep Purple mentioned a lot of times. I remember an interview with David Lee Roth mentioning Deep Purple. So I'm like, all right, everybody likes this band. I might have seen a picture of Ian Gillan and thought, okay, he's the shit. So
Yeah,
that's how I wound up picking them up. But I mean, I was into a lot of that, of course, like Ozzy and stuff like that, like all these bands that I didn't know, like related to Deep Purple, like Steve Vai as a solo act, Passion and Warfare. I remember really loving that one, because it was like the quintessential guitar album, Satriani's Surfing with the Alien. So I was kind of like into all that stuff. But definitely the glam metal stuff first. But it's funny how much of it I didn't realize was like related to Deep Purple the way that we talk about it now. But yeah, so it was mainly that stuff. So definitely like the hard rock vein, like nothing really, too diverse from that.
well, yeah, and it's funny. We mentioned it's hard to find somebody that wouldn't have been somehow influenced by Deep Purple. So now you're talking about David Lee Roth. I wouldn't doubt it, but I would never have thought. I bet David Lee Roth was influenced by Deep Purple because there's nothing about his style that would lead me to say, yeah, I could see where, maybe he picked something up, because he sings about completely different topics. He's very flashy. He's, just not. It would have never occurred to me. So there's another band you couldn't cover.
Yeah, true.
Yeah.
And I mean, and we even earlier episodes when we found out there was that Van Halen Deep Purple connection, like from when they covered what is it, some Mark III, like in their early days,
Mm-hmm.
their backyard party days, like who would have known? And I mean, even then, David Lee Roth, Steve Vai, you still have that connection.
Yeah, there was a video of Eddie Van Halen in a warm up before a show where he's playing a bunch of Deep Purple tunes. It's a lot of fun to watch him play that kind of stuff too.
Mhm.
From the Gardot,
Oh boy.
he wants to know if you have to pay income taxes from the Patreon loot.
I will take that one. Yes, we do actually.
Yes. Yes.
We do, because it reached a certain threshold where we have to. So yeah. Which is good. Yeah, I just remember getting that one email once. It's like, oh, by the way, you have to pay income tax on this. Like, crap. Of course.
It is actually. I mean, even if you're not an actual, like, you guys aren't an LLC, but if you have income from anything that you do legally, you have to claim it. I have to go through the same thing. Yeah, of course they do. Okay, so that was an easy one, Peter, and I'm not surprised you asked that question in the least. I don't know why that doesn't surprise me, but it doesn't.
It's one of Peter's 12 submitted questions.
Yeah, Peter's going to appear almost as much as a very special lady in your life, Nate, Jennifer Beaudry. I think that you are related to.
She sounds familiar.
Who is upstairs, hopefully recovering right now from feeling ill.
Okay, yeah.
And she said, you have said that there is literally no end to the number of potential topics you could cover in this podcast. And then I can't read the rest. What does it? I can't. Oh, I can scroll over. 3 years in, do you still think this is true? I'm going to ask John first, because I'd be curious to hear what you have to say.
I mean, I think there's no end in sight, seriously, because I mean, really, if Nate took the time to, like, I mean, the time that he's taken to already map out what episodes we're going to do for, a couple of months, a year or whatever, it's just like, if you just kept branching out and branching out, I mean, it could go on. It could go on forever. I mean, because you're not only talking about Deep Purple themselves, but the musicians that were involved with them and all of their albums and projects, and then all the other topics we could do on them, such as like a bio, or things like we did, like Ritchie's guitar one episode, or you know what I mean? Like, there's so many different topics you can do. So once you're done with like albums, like just album reviews or anything, just like other kind of one-off topics we've done, like the game show, or the stuff like that, interviews, I don't know how long it can go on for. To me, it seems endless.
It's endless. What about you, Nate? Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I mean, I think I mean, yeah, from a mathematical standpoint, yes, there'd be a point where there was nothing else we could cover, but I think we will age. We will have to pass it on to a new generation, the show, because from my standpoint, I think, I can't remember if we talked about this on the show or if we just talked about it offline, but one thing that we had talked about was, if we ran out of topics, or if we just wanted to say, we're done with this format, one of the things I thought was taking all of the existing Deep Purple songs and putting them in and doing like a random song generator sort of thing with them, and just picking one at random every week to review on an individual song basis. And that would be enough to get us through 4 or 5 years, probably, maybe more, if we did that. But I don't see us getting to the point where, like, oh my God, I can't think of anything else, because I look at all the topics we have. There's hundreds and hundreds of albums, there's hundreds and hundreds of live shows, and then there's hundreds of other just ideas, and people are always sending us ideas. What if you did a show on this and this? We've got great ones. Sometimes we just move it right to the top of the queue because we're excited about it. Sometimes we say that's awesome, but I'm not sure how to handle it, so we put it a little later. But we've gotten great ideas from our listeners. So yeah, I mean, I could see this. I could see us having ideas for years and years to come. It's just a matter of how long we can do this. I mean, it'll only get easier for me as my kids get older. So
there is that. Yeah. So I'm sorry,
even
Jen.
in the three years we've been doing it, it's gotten easier. So yeah, it's just a matter of, as long as we're having fun doing it and people seem to enjoy it, why not keep going?
I'm sorry, Jen, there is no end in sight.
Yeah, that's why she wanted to know. Hey.
When do I get my husband back?
Yeah.
So in that light, though, I would have to say I'm really looking forward to your episode reviewing The Shining, because Barry Dennen, who played Pontius Pilate, was in The Shining very briefly, had the strangest role I've ever seen in a movie.
That would be a stretch. Yeah, that'd be
that would be it. I mean, you could really go that far. You could also cover Billy Madison, because the guy that played Herod in the movie was in Billy Madison. So
Really?
you could really go that
Wow.
far and really, keep the show going
well,
on a
maybe that
thread.
would
If
be
you
maybe that would be the game, right? Is that we'd be like, today's episode is we're gonna watch Billy Madison, and people have to say, okay, how are they gonna tie this into Deep Purple? And that would be the game. We'd be like, there's gonna be a connection there. We're not gonna tell you until we get to it.
There you
That
go.
would actually be pretty.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be fun. A little reverse connection. I like
exactly.
that.
You see if you can figure it out before we get there. Yeah.
Now, I actually have an answer for this question myself, but I'm really curious what you guys think. With the hope, of course, that Deep Purple is going to get into the studio to record another album. I mean, the last two albums have been amazing. The writing has been some of the best they've ever done, as far as I'm concerned. But what they did with Whoosh was they ended it, well, controversy aside from what was the ending actual song, they ended it with And the Address, which was the first song that Deep Purple released on the album, not the first song they wrote, which was Mandrake Root. If they were to do another studio album, what would you like to see them end it with?
Are we stuck? Oh, not stuck with, but are we sticking just to rehashing Mark I tracks, or
Not necessarily, just anything that you think would be a fitting ending to the next album, likely being the last one, should there be another one, which, I'm hoping there is.
Well, like another ending it with like another cover of one of their earlier works.
Something like that. Yeah. Whatever. It could be somebody else's work. It could be one of theirs. I mean, obviously a new song would be likely, but let's say that they wanted to do something that's not a new song. What would you like to see them do? How about you, John?
Oh,
you don't look
boy.
stumped.
I am stumped.
I think I would like to see them go out rather than. I thought the And the Address thing was a really cool idea that I think they unfortunately took a lot of the wind out of by putting a bonus track right after it. We've talked about that, endlessly on the show. I thought that was a really cool idea. Since they've already done that, and now it looks like maybe they'll do another album, that kind of also further deflates that the impact of that. So to me, I would rather see it be an original that is like a kind of a moving original, like You Keep on Moving. When you hear that song and you just, wow, like this is so. This really feels emotional. It's the final song. You didn't know if the band was ever going to get back together again. This time you can rest assured they're not getting back together. So something like that, an original that's very moving and touching and will kind of has that same haunting feeling to it. That's what I would like to go with.
That's actually what my pick was.
I was going to say the same thing. Yeah.
Yeah. That would be the song I would pick. Yeah.
What about you, actually redo that one?
Yeah.
Well, we know that would never happen. So.
No, it wouldn't. But I mean, if I could say what would be like the most perfect song for them to do if they were going to do a cover, because you're right, it was really the ending of a concert type song, but it had that haunting quality. There was really something kind of magical about it. It was almost as if they knew they weren't coming back for another album. They just wrote this song as like their farewell. So yeah, I think that would be a fitting, and also going off the And the Address thing, doing like the first song that the band did, like doing the last song they did before they broke up, would be kind of a neat thing. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know that I would have any influence over that.
Or maybe like a 35-minute version of Wring That Neck.
That would be good.
It's a double CD. The second CD is just Wring That Neck.
Well, they've done it live. How about you, John?
I mean, my answer is kind of the same as Nate's. I mean, that's what I was thinking of, but he articulated it much better. Is like, I was thinking of something, like, you said You Keep on Moving. I was thinking of like Soldier of Fortune. Something like that. I mean, they're both kind of in the same vein, two great album closers, like very, very moving, very kind of like, has that feeling of finality, like Our Lady, which I thought was like very, I remember even saying that during the the review of the album is that it was like, I thought it was a great song because it sounded like this kind of grandiose kind of ending song, almost like they knew that this was going to be it.
Mhm.
So I mean, I think, yeah, like an original, instead of like looking back, like look forward, like try and write the next classic Deep Purple song. Don't try and lean on the old. I mean,
Yeah.
they're already done that by just like being a not making themselves a legacy act. Like they're still releasing new music. So I feel
Or
like
maybe
they'd be able to do it.
maybe there won't be another album because who knows? Maybe they just won't get to it. It won't happen, and then they'll release a version of Whoosh without the bonus track, and then it could be they could fix that problem.
Well, if they
There you
do
go.
that, I'd like for them to release a version of Infinite without the cover at the end, because if you listen to
Yes.
Birds of Prey and you listen to that fade
Mhm.
out and then go right back into the beginning of the album, it is seamlessly perfect for me. And
Yeah,
that
it's gonna-
cover just kind of killed that vibe a little bit for me.
It's gonna be a while before we get to that album, so I don't want to show my hand, but yes, I agree.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, you guys haven't done that one yet. I'm sorry.
It'll be a while too.
A little bit. Well, I'll throw this question at you guys because I remember one of the things that I heard Ian Gillan say when he was interviewed after he left Deep Purple was that he really wanted them to go into the direction of Our Lady. He thought that was a great song, and he wanted to see them do more songs like that. I could see maybe doing a couple songs an album, maybe, but not that can't be your focus if you're a hard rock act. That's just not going to work. But that leads me to a question on another song on that album, the song Smooth Dancer. Do you guys think that was a cry for help from Ian pre-resignation? What do you think, John?
Yeah, I mean, by all accounts, the story goes that it was. I mean, that's why he wrote the supposedly wrote the lyrics about Ritchie, which we thought was really funny because it's like he's like right there, talking about him. But yeah, I think so. And it's kind of weird to think about that, like just musicians doing that, like writing um cry, like you said, like a cry for help, or like digs at other people, or trying to make commentary, like, I mean, commentary like like at large, like this is my background, these are my feelings, this is social commentary. But I always thought it was kind of funny when they're just like, I'm going to take a dig at one of my bandmates, in the lyrics type of thing. It's just like, I always thought that was kind of strange. But yeah, I do think so, because I mean, what does it achieve other than that, like, forever and ever everybody thinks like, wow, that Dick just wrote these lyrics about Ritchie, and they're like immortalized forever because he was mad at him like 50 years ago or whatever it was.
And
But yeah, I mean, but yeah, I would say that in the context of everything that I know, I would say, yeah, it was probably a cry for help, or maybe a release for
which
him.
ended up frustrating him even more when Ritchie either didn't realize it was about him or didn't care that it was about him, and then because he was trying to piss him off, and Ritchie was like, I don't know what these lyrics are about, I don't give a shit, I'm playing my guitar. And then Ian's getting more mad. But you think of like No Doubt's Tragic Kingdom,
Oh yeah.
which every song is about her being pissed off about Tony Canal breaking up with her. And not only is every song about that, but every song on the album practically was a #1 hit, and doing videos for it. And again, he's standing right there. And it wasn't super subtle either. But yeah, and then probably like half of Fleetwood Mac songs too are the same way. So it's an interesting thing. I mean, what else are you going to write about besides like what's going on? And if you're writing these emotional songs about what's going on in your life, it's probably going to involve your bandmates at some point.
I just wonder
especially if you're romantically involved with them.
Yeah, I just wonder if Gwen Stefani or Ian Gillan, whenever they were, well, I don't think they ever did Smooth Dancer live, but if she ever just walks right up to Tony Canal and sings the song right to him in front of 30,000 people.
Yeah, talk about awkward.
Right. Yeah, I always thought so. Just even in the lines, like he's always said that he had great respect and love for Ritchie. They just couldn't get along. But with lines like if you don't do it right, I'm gonna walk. Yeah, was kind of really telltale to me. I don't know that anybody really thought about that as a real thing. Just like, well, these are the lyrics he wrote, or this is the story he's telling. I don't know if he even necessarily knew what he meant when he wrote that, but as an observer, it's pretty obvious to me that it wasn't long before he wrote the letter. So
Well, anybody that's been in a band too would realize that there's a very strong resemblance of your relationship with your bandmates and your relationship with like a significant other. Like you're around each other all the time. You've got these investments that you've made together. So it can be very frustrating. And I'm speaking as someone who's only been in bands that weren't really making any money or other than, oh, we made $50 for the show split between 4 people or whatever. So, like there's enough emotion going on there. I can only imagine when you're talking about this is your main income and you're getting millions of dollars and all that sort of stuff, how the tensions could mount very, very quickly. So yeah, it's there's a lot of parallels. And I think that's why a lot of lyrics like that could slip by, because it could sound like it's about a lover when it's about one of your bandmates, because it's a similar relationship.
Very true. And especially with the intense touring schedule that these guys were just constantly under because management would not let up whatsoever. Right. The Gardeau asked if you were taxed on that $50 that you got with your band.
Yeah, right. He knew what we were going to talk about.
I know it's in his head when he's listening to this. So I just thought
I'm sure technically like the $50 I made for that gig I played in 1999 should be taxed on. So yeah, come after me, IRS, I guess.
I think you can write it off with expenses. I think you're okay.
Yeah. Believe me, every band I've been in has been a losing proposition. There was no profit made at the end of the day.
Same here. Now, Roger Maybank from Twitter asks, was the first Deep Purple song that you heard that made you realize they were the band for you? Sorry, I got to scroll over again. I should do that before I start reading the question. Mine was the live version of Black Knight from the same shows that became the Made in Japan set. Just an incredible rendition. So what was that for you, Nate?
I don't know 100%. It was one of 2 songs. It was either Bloodsucker or Mary Long. It was probably Mary Long. I just remember those 2 hanging out with. So my friend Paul was at the same high school with John, in the same grade as John, and it's probably where he got his main Deep Purple influence from, which kind of trickled over to me before John and I we knew of each other before we started like hanging out more regularly. And I remember listening to those 2 songs in his room while we were playing video games or whatever we were doing. And that those 2 really stuck out to me. And Mary Long in particular. So it was probably one of those 2. I don't know 100% for which one it was.
I would assume that you mean the Deep Purple and rock version of Bloodsucker and not the one from, I think it's, is it Abandon?
Yeah, this was a while before Abandon came out. So yeah, it was the in rock version. Yeah.
I thought so. What about you, John?
So it was either Speed King or Black Knight. Mm-hmm. Because I think it was I can't remember which one started off that the Deepest Purple compilation, but it was those 2 songs. So it was one of those 2. Probably Speed King. I mean, it was definitely something off in rock.
Yeah, great, both great. All 4 of those are great songs. I think the first song I actually heard was Smoke on the Water. I mean, I know I heard it by Rainbow when they were doing the concert in Texas that was on MTV. But when I think the first album I got was Machine Head. Mm-hmm. So the first Deep Purple song I might have heard, I either put Smoke on the Water on first, or I just started with Highway Star. I honestly don't remember, but all great songs, of course.
I would say one more that is a possibility is Perfect Strangers, specifically from Nobody's Perfect. Because I remember the first time I remember those 3 songs specifically all sticking out at me. And I remember when it goes the dun dun dun, thinking, well, wow, like Deep Purple's way heavier than I even thought. So, and at that point it was like all about being heavy, So so one of those 3. So yeah, I've not narrowed, I've widened the possibility. So there you go.
And a great section from that song too. I mean, I like the song as it is, but that when it hits that section, I just want to replay it over and over and over again. Yeah. Like if I was in a band, I would say, let's just play that for 20 minutes because I could really enjoy just getting into that section for a while. Almost like it was I Want You by the Beatles and just playing that one part. Our good friend over at Skinnerd Reconsidered, his own show on Leonard Skinnerd, who is soon to be, I believe, coming back with another season, we hope. And
He
he
just released
asked,
actually he just released a new episode today.
oh, really? Oh, okay,
Yeah,
great.
which is very surprising because we're trying to get him to release new episodes forever. Yeah, so
It's been a good year or so, I think.
it's a politically charged episode, but yeah.
Ooh. Oh, this should be interesting.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to listening. I just saw it right before we started, so I'm looking forward to listening to it.
He's not shy about his opinions. I like that.
No, not at all. In fact, I just got to hang out with him because
That's right.
we went to Nashville last week. My kids were on spring break, and yeah, we finally met him in person. It's always great meeting somebody in person that you've talked to a million times because it's just like, oh hey, it's you, and it's it's like for some reason I've done it enough times now where it's just not that weird anymore. You're just like,
Yeah.
oh cool, and then we went bowling, we went out for dinner, the kids played. It was a lot of fun.
That's awesome. Yeah, I saw some pictures of you guys together, and I thought that's cool that you got to meet up. What he asked, what are your favorite episodes of the show? John, what do you think?
Oh boy, I wish I'd done some more preparation on that one.
Do you want me to come back to you?
No, because I'm like, because I mean, I have like the ones that stick out, or maybe one of the ones that sticks out was Nate. Which one was that trapeze episode that we did that we were like all,
what I was thinking.
that we were all
was,
goofy like
it was You're the Music, We're Just the Band.
yeah, I thought so. Yeah, no, we were like, we had a blast on that one.
Yeah, I don't know why. It was just like we were getting all these one-liners in and just didn't having. It was just a really fun episode to do. I don't know why that's one of my favorites as well.
Yeah, that's that's one of my favorites. And then I know that I've answered this question or we've talked about it before, but really any episode where we've had on a guest is usually my favorite. I mean, there's like varying degrees. Like, I mean, every time Rye has come on to do the Sabbath episodes, those have been great. Of course, you know, having Scott on is always a lot of fun.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And and I'm trying to remember. There was another one that I can't remember. Oh well, of course, like the ones that like Nick has been on. Like, I mean, the Blizzard of Oz episode. I was like, the one that I remember. I couldn't wait until we could get to it because I'm just like, one of my favorite albums. So that was like a ton of fun as well. But of all of our regular episodes, and I'm sure I'm forgetting them, like that trapeze one, I just remember we were like off the rails, like making jokes, and it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, that was definitely one that stood out for me as well. What about you, Nate?
Yeah, well, obviously the trapeze one. Yeah, and then there's some that were just been really like excited to do. And there's some like where I like the trapeze one, like I couldn't really say anything specific that happened in the episode. I just remember we were just kind of a little loopy that night. I don't know if maybe we did it later, but it just was really fun. James Gang Bang was a lot of fun. I was, you know, I remember when we started out, you know, it felt like we were doing Mark 1 for like 12 years because you know, when you, as you'll be able to relate to, when you start a podcast, you're like, oh, I can't wait to get to this and to that. I'm going to do everything. I'm going to conquer the world. And then, you know, you record an episode and you're like, I can't wait till it comes out so I can listen to it. And you're all excited. And, you know, years later, you're just like, wait, what episode? I was talking to somebody today and like, what episode was it today? I'm like, I don't even remember. What did you, I had to like look it up because I didn't even know what episode came out today that we recorded, whatever, 3 weeks ago. So yeah, I think it's just about like the particular frame of mind you're in. But anyway, it felt like forever we were doing Mark 1, and then we got to Mark 2, and that was really exciting. And then I remember thinking, oh my God, we're never gonna get to Mark 3 and 4. And it was like whatever, 3 weeks later, 4 weeks, because you know, we're doing one album a week until we get through the original, you know, run of albums. So yeah, like I remember when Come Taste the Band finally came, I was like, I can't believe it's come up. Like it was whatever, episode 20 or something. It was super early on. So yeah, like I think like those early episodes were, it was fun just thinking about how long it felt like at the time. And now you're just like, now you record an episode, you edit it and upload it and you're like, oh crap, we're recording again in 2 days.
Right. Well, the episode that came out today was Glory Road, your review of Ian Gillan's album, which is an album that I love. I've been listening to that since I was really young, and I really enjoyed that episode. One thing that was funny though, Nate, was that you had said, and this happens, you know, when you're doing a podcast, you got so many things on your mind, you're thinking about what you're going to be doing, what you've already done. And in the moment, you almost get a little bit lost. And you had said, when you said something about the song No Easy Way, you announced it as No Easy Way Out from Rocky IV. And so, but this is what your show does.
Oops. Yep.
I started thinking, I wonder what songs on this album would make good montages for Rocky movies. And my mind just kind of, you know, goes where it goes. One of my favorite episodes, and not because I was a guest on it, but was when the first one I was on, when we did the what if scenarios, because we were recording really late, and poor John, it was like 1, 2 in the morning for him, and we were just getting loopy, and I don't even know what we were talking about by the end of it. we were pretty gone.
No, that was a fun one.
I love going back and listening to the early episodes because you guys weren't even playing the whole song. You would, you know, like on Shades of Deep Purple, the Book of Taliesin, you would say, okay, that's enough of that. And then you just stop playing the song and go on to something else. But it was cool because it was like, you guys really didn't have the format down yet. It was just two guys talking about stuff that they want to talk about songs and how they made them feel, which is what you still do now. It's just a little more refined now. But I actually like those more, you know, raw episodes too, because you can kind of see, just like the early versions of a band, when you hear their demos or whatever, it's like, you know, you can kind of see where it comes from and appreciate even more where it got. But do you guys feel like I do when you cover an album and you're like, oh man, that's done now. I've said everything there is to say about that. I kind of feel like maybe there was something more I wanted to say.
I do when it's like an important album, but like if it's, you know, if it's one of the Warhorse albums, I'm just like, oh, thank God. But yeah, like I feel like when it's a big like landmark album, like Perfect Strangers, or you know, like John mentioned, we were looking to do Blizzard of Oz and things like that. You just like, when you were looking forward to it for so long and it comes and goes. So I find like a lot of the Deep Purple albums, by the time they come and go, it's just like you blink and it's over and you're like, wow. And then of course, inevitably you get all the listener emails. Oh, you didn't mention this or that or that. Of course we didn't.
Right.
Or all the things you misspoke and said, like No Easy Way Out, you know, like all that stuff pops up and you're just like, I wish we could have, but you know, it's yeah, I wouldn't say I dwell on it, but yeah, there is kind of when it's an important album for me, I feel like at the end of you're like, wow, I can't believe that's over.
Now, I don't want to make you feel bad, Nate. I actually recently released an episode of the Magicians Podcast where I announced the wrong song, and I had to go back and and edit it. You know, you're looking at the song, but you're looking at your list of songs, and so you know, my eyes just went to the wrong one, even though I had the right one highlighted. And like a genius, I just said the completely wrong song. And Kenny Wymore actually was kind enough to write me and let me know. And so I went back and re-edited it and uploaded it. But I mean, it happens, you know, there's a lot to cover. But what about you, John, when you cover an album, you know, maybe a bigger album like that, like Nate said, when it's over, do you kind of feel like, wow, that's it, we've done that one, and that's the end of that?
Yeah, I mean, sometimes it depends on the album, or maybe I'll you know, there'll be somewhere like, oh, I really enjoyed these songs, so like maybe for the next few days or week or whatever, I'll be listening to those songs of that album in the car, and then I'll be second guessing myself, like, oh, I should have given this a better rating, or you know what I mean, or oh, I forgot to mention that I felt like this, and now I never have a chance to say it again. But I mean, only sometimes, you know, like for instance, we were talking about Blizzard of Oz. Like, I think like, well, we still have Diary of a Madman. But then when that's over, like what's the next thing going to be that's going to get me all excited, you know? I mean, you know, it's kind of like the Purple albums. Like, we're not done with all of them yet. And I know that's why Nate's holding off on them, because once we're done with all the proper ones, that's it.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Yeah, I think you could just start over and say, okay, now that we've been through all the albums, we're going to start over and see how we feel about them now, and then just redo all the albums and say everything that you wanted to say.
I mean, especially by the point we're done with all of them, if we wanted to revisit, say, In Rock 5 years later, I mean, we could certainly do that. It wouldn't be out of the question.
Yeah, absolutely. On Twitter again, Art Smith Drums wants to know. Let me scroll over. Now, see, I'm getting smarter at this. I don't normally interview this way. So love the shows, as you know. There are obviously delays between recording and broadcasting. Do you operate to a regular recording schedule? You kind of talked about this a little bit. Or do you do batches of a few shows at a time? I know sometimes you guys do, when you have the time or when you know a vacation or something is coming up, you'll kind of stockpile a couple of episodes to get you through that time. How do you handle that, John?
Nate handles it.
Well, we both handle it.
No, like but we'll coordinate, like if we have we have a holiday, big holidays coming up at work, or like vacations during the summer or something like that. Nate and I'll text each other or talk and just be like, anticipate like, hey, this is going to be a time where we're not going to be able to do anything. So let's bank like X number of episodes, and then we'll just try and figure out, all right, aside from our regular recording schedule, could you record like another day or night this week? And then we'll just try and figure it out. And that's the extent of it for me.
Yeah, it's usually, John will say, oh, I forgot to mention I'm going to be out of town this week or whatever, so we'll need to not record, and then so we'll do two, and sometimes we'll do our nighttime recording, and then we'll find a time during the day. Sometimes it'll be at 8:30, 9:30 in the morning. We'll do an episode, and just to bank a couple. We usually don't record like at all during December. We or maybe like very early December, like by December 3rd, we're like shuttered up for the year. We've got all of our episodes going through the middle to end of January, and then we, because it's just so hectic with work and with family, and then we'll reconvene at the beginning of January, and we try to keep maybe 2-3 episodes ahead. But sometimes it's weird, and it's like a weird order, and we'll record like 6 episodes out or 6 weeks out, and then we'll do one that we're recording on a Sunday to be released on the following Monday morning, like in a few hours, because it might be something topical. So that's pretty rare, but it's happened a few times. So yeah, it's kind of all over the map. It's just, so yeah, sometimes we'll reference things from episodes that the viewer or listener won't hear yet. It was like, I remember when we said that. Oh, that was funny. And then it's like, oops, that's like 3 episodes from now.
Right.
I've had you've caught me a couple of times where I'm like, yeah, when we review this, and you're like, and I'm like, I never said anything. Edit it out.
Well, when you were talking about one,
and then he doesn't edit it out.
Exactly. We're talking one of our favorite episodes. Well, one of probably the hardest that we've ever laughed is in an episode that hasn't come out yet, where we talked about. I don't know if I want to spoil it for you, but it's not that big of a spoil. We talked about about TikTok. And we were just in hysterics for like the last 20 minutes of the episode talking, or maybe the last few minutes of the episode. And then after the episode was over, we went on TikTok and started doing all this stupid stuff. And it was, I don't even remember what episode it was or what we were talking about, but I just remember we had a really good laugh about it. So if you're listening to this, you've already probably heard that episode. But it was a lot of fun. It was the Glory Road episode that came out today, actually. Oh, was it? Okay.
Oh, there we go.
So no spoilers, no worries.
There you go. So yeah, that was, oh man, we were laughing so hard at the end of, you don't know how much of it is just because you're tired or whatever, but yeah. Well, and I want to congratulate you guys too, because in the 3 years that you've had this show going, you have not missed a single episode. You've even thrown in some bonus episodes with interviews with Tony Ashton singing Burn and some fun stuff, but you've never missed an episode. And it's really easy to, just like you said, we really don't feel like recording this week, got stuff coming up, whatever it is. It's so easy to say, I love doing the show, but this week I'm not so into it. So congratulations, because you guys have been incredibly consistent. You couldn't be more perfect than not missing a week in 3 years. So well done. I figure like if you miss an episode, then that's kind of a license to just miss them whenever you want, so I figure like the consistency, and there's a lot of people that, not that nothing would happen if we didn't release an episode, it wouldn't be a big deal, but our listeners have become dependent on that, and they expect Monday morning they're going to get an episode. So I think it's the least we could do. Sometimes it just means we it's not a big deal. Usually, sometimes we just record 2 episodes. Sometimes we'll record an episode at night and we'll wake up early the next morning and record another episode. And then, it's like, that's kind of not the first thing we'd want to do. But then at the end of the day, it's like, well, now we have a week off and we don't have to record an episode next week. So, whatever it takes to get the stuff out, it's pretty easy to bank it up. If there was some sort of big tragedy in one of our lives or something, obviously we'd miss episodes. But
but I mean, if you consider too, like, some podcasts that I listened to were like they had to take a week off because somebody's sick, or somebody's out of town, like things that have normal occurrences like that have happened to us. And if you figure, like, with all the craziness going on in your life, with all your kids, and like over the past couple of years with COVID and everything like that, and our crazy work schedules, like nothing so catastrophic has happened to us that we've missed an episode. And I've seen some podcasts like miss an episode here or there for much less, but I mean, that's, like you said, it's about the consistency.
Well, people really come
to stay a few weeks ahead too, is if something does happen, okay, well, we could miss 2 weeks, maybe 3 weeks, and then just jump right on it, getting it recorded before it needs to come out. So it's having that buffer is, I always feel more comfortable knowing, if something happened tonight, it wouldn't have been the end of the world.
And we've had a few instances too where we're just like, wait a minute, we have no buffer. That's happened like a couple of times. We're like, oh shit, we're actually like up to date. We have
when I remember what episode is coming out on Monday, I'm worried. I'm like, oh no, I know what episode's coming out. It's the one we just did.
There were a couple times where I was about 6 weeks ahead with the Uriah Heep Magicians podcast, which is tough because that's 4 episodes a week. So I'm like 6 weeks ahead. And then I thought, like, I'm good for a while, and I completely lost track of time. And I went, I have 2 episodes left in the bank, and that's it. And so I had to like hurry up and record a bunch of them. So yeah, it does creep up on you, but the fans do appreciate that kind of consistency. They love knowing that whether it's Sunday night, like it is for me, or early Monday morning, you've got an episode of the Deep Purple podcast to start off your week. It's a really great thing. People have said to me too, they're like, I listen to your show every morning when I walk the dog, and it just becomes part of the routine. I listen to a podcast that they review a game, and they have to play the game to be able to review it. So sometimes it's like 3 weeks, sometimes it's 3 months before an episode will come out. And I just every once in a while just look at the podcast player and go, nope, nothing new. Nope, nothing new. Oh, there's one.
Yeah. I like knowing when it's gonna hit.
Yeah, exactly. So very, very important. Well Disguised from Twitter asks, have you ever heard the album Perpendicular? Well, I guess that's a legitimate question, because you guys have said that you haven't really experienced that much of the Steve Morse era. I think, Nate, you said you did listen to Perpendicular. What about you, John? Have you heard it?
Yes.
You have?
Yep. I mean, yeah, it's actually, it's kind of funny that one was brought up, because that was the, of course, the first Steve Morse album. So when it came out, I was interested in hearing it. And then it, like, at the time, it didn't do it for me, because I was hoping for something else, and just kind of put it on the back burner. But after our recent trip to Florida to see them, I went back and listened to it again, because I'm like, all right, I'm going to start here and work my way up to getting a little bit more familiar with the more recent era, past at this point, past 30 years, recent 25 years or whatever, the more recent, but the more current Deep Purple. And I was pleasantly surprised that I enjoyed it, because I've become more open-minded. So, I mean, songs like Ted the Mechanic, I always liked anyways. But I mean, I appreciated it much more just because of the groove and everything. He was texting me and
Rich being like, this album kicks ass. And we're like, we know, we've been telling you this.
I know. It's like Rose's Cantina. Yeah. And you're just like, we know, we've known forever.
It's old news at this point. I got it when it first came out at the import store that we used to go to.
Yeah, me too.
And yeah, I definitely really dug it then, and I think I appreciate it even more now. But Well Disguised recently did an episode of his podcast on Perpendicular,
Ah,
going under I think it was Coverdale Page he did an episode on, and realized it was like his most viewed episode ever. And he's like, why is this? And then when he realized it's not on Spotify, he said, well, what other albums aren't on Spotify that I can do an episode on and get a lot of traffic? And Perpendicular came up. And I know I've gotten a ton of people that said they discovered the show because they were searching for Deep Purple music or albums, and they found our episode on them and listened, and that's how they got hooked on the show. So if you're the only thing coming up when somebody searches Perpendicular, then that's going to bring you a lot of traffic. So yeah, I almost wish we were at Perpendicular a little sooner, because that would be great to get new people to the show.
well, please enjoy my review next week of Perpendicular.
Exactly.
I think the tough thing is, especially when there's a big change in the band and you're talking not just a performance standpoint, but a sound, like a sonic quality standpoint and a writing standpoint. It's tough. Like you said, John, it wasn't what you expected. And that is the thing, is you do kind of have an expectation of what it's going to sound like. And then if it doesn't meet that expectation, sometimes it's hard to get over that for a little while. I really like the writing on it. I had a hard time with Steve's sound. I didn't like that screech that he had in his guitar on some of the songs. And it really made it hard for me. I've gotten past that now, and I can enjoy the album just fine. But in the beginning, that was kind of the holdback for me, was like, I just don't like his sound. You know?
Yeah. I mean, I wasn't really like, when Ritchie was exiting the band and they got Satriani and then they got Morse, I was like, yeah, I like these. Like, I like the Satriani by Morse type players, but not in Deep Purple. You know, that was my whole thought process then. It was kind of like Steve Vai and Whitesnake. It's like, what are you doing? But I mean, now I feel differently, because I realize that these guys are just just shredders, or whatever the preconceived notion is, like guitar virtuosos that do all this inaccessible, like kind of avant-garde music, like they can actually play and sound good with these bands. So like Slip of the Tongue with Steve Vai, I love it. Perpendicular and all the stuff that Steve Morse has done, like, love it, because now I get it. But at the time, like I said, I just didn't want that kind of guitar player in Deep Purple. That would be like, Yngwie being in Deep Purple. It's like, to me, it didn't fit, because it wasn't like who I was used to, which, was Ritchie's style.
Right. Well, the good thing about Yngwie is he either has or has not heard of Deep Purple. We don't know what day it is.
I don't think they had any influence on him.
Not at all.
But hey, before we go on, I'm a little late on this, but I just remembered we should thank some patrons. Yes. So big thanks to our core level patrons. Coming in at the $7.77 Keep It Warm Rat tier, we have Michael Vader. At the episode $6.66 tier, we have Steve Coldwell, Arthur Smith, Anton Glaving, and Mike Catan. At the $6.65 Almost Evil tier, we have Kenny Wymore. At the $5.99 Nice Price tier, we have Fielding Fowler, Robert Smith, Peter from Illinois, and Michael Bagford, new patron. Thank you so much. At the $5 money lender tier, we have John Convery, German Heindel, Adrian Hernandez, Jesper Alman, Alexei the Perfect Stranger Slepikoff, James North, Mark Hodgetts, Will Porter, Zwapper the Electric Alchemist, and Tim Southern Cross Johnson. Thank you so much to all of you for your generous support of the Deep Purple podcast. And here we go. I'm going to kick it back to Scott for some more questions.
One more quick note on Perpendicular. I did hear an interview with John Lord where he said that he thought that was their best album that they had made since Machine Head. This is very interesting. I know he really enjoyed playing with Steve. He said in an interview too, he's like, I really hope I get the chance to play with him again. And I don't know if they ever did anything after that interview, but he really appreciated it. He said he was a very generous guitarist. And I could say, honestly, meeting Steve Morse, he's just an incredibly nice guy. He's got a great vibe. Just really friendly, not like, he's ranked one of the best guitarists in the world. I don't know how many years in a row, but he's just such a nice, normal, humble guy. It's really refreshing. So CD Morissette on Twitter wants to know, what are your go-to podcasts? Nate, I know you're a big fan of podcasts.
I am. That's Corey from the podcast Will Rock.
That's right.
I think in one of our episodes, I think I said in the podcast shall rock or something. I said something. I don't know why. And I'm like, it was one of those things, like I listened back to it, or I can't remember if I typed it out. I don't remember what it was that I did. I was like, what the hell was I thinking?
That's the British version.
And the cradle shall rock, my good man. So I'm opening my podcasts on my phone here. So all deep dive podcast networks aside, because those are obvious ones, and the podcast will rock right there at the top. Great alphabetical, great choice for your podcast. It's at the top of most feeds. A couple of good ones that I really like is the Beard Al podcast, where they drink beer and talk about Weird Al. Great
I
stuff.
love it.
It's a sister and brother, which I got tickets to go see Weird Al when he comes to Chicago.
Nice.
I'm taking my boys. They both want to go see him. One I listened to, which we talked about earlier, was one of those ones that is super infrequent. Is Dan Carlin's Hardcore History. He's an amazing presenter, and just talks. Some of his episodes are 5-6 hours long. And he'll do like a 5-parter on World War I, and each part is 5 hours.
Oh my God.
Absolutely captivating, super interesting. Just such a dynamic speaker. Just really holds your attention. But he'll release 4 episodes a year, maybe, because he's basically putting out audiobooks that he's researching and doing all himself. So it's a big job. What else?
He's like the Dan Brown of podcasts. It takes him 2 years to research everything he does to put in a book, but when he puts that book out, it's worth listening to.
Absolutely. Judge John Hodgman is another one. If you're familiar with John Hodgman at all, he people bring disputes to him, and they just present it like it's an actual trial, and he tells people who's right and who's wrong, which I always thought it's very funny. It's fun to listen to. The Music Production Podcast by Brian Funk, which I was actually on an episode of years ago. Really interesting show. What else? Aside from those are the kind of the main ones, I think. Aside from the deep dive podcasts.
Absolutely. How about you, John?
So I got a few. I just started listening to Backtracks Aerosmith Revisited, which Nate had brought up, as they're part of the Deep Dive Network now, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they only have a few episodes, but I thought, like, okay, there's like literally like I haven't heard any Aerosmith podcasts, and I really like them, so they're kind of doing the Pot of Thunder style of breakdown song to song, but a little bit of a different way. So a lot of them are like honestly like Kiss podcasts, but they branch out. Like they're primarily Kiss fans, but they will branch out to like other things, or like the Kiss family, like the Rock Experience with Mike Brunn is like a great kind of a interview show. Only rivaled by our friend here, Scott, who is a great interviewer.
Oh, thank you.
That's right.
Occasionally History in 5 Songs with Martin Popoff, if he's got a topic on that I am interested in. The Look It's Rock and Roll podcast, which is a spawn from the Kiss FAQ podcast, and that's like their bonus episode podcast with most of the same people discussing like non-Kiss related albums or goings on or concerts or whatever. Occasionally Three Sides of the Coin, a very long running Kiss podcast, if they have on an interesting episode. Shout It Out Loudcast, weekly Kiss podcast, Pot of Thunder, of course.
Oh yeah,
one of my favorites.
Pot of Thunder, that was silly.
Yeah. The Deep Purple podcast, when it's an interesting topic, I want to listen back to it. And much to Nate's chagrin, the Eddie Trunk podcast, when he has on some interesting guests, because he does have on an assortment of like really cool guests. Yeah, those are a lot of go-tos, minus like on and off like some others in the Deep Dive Network as well. Some which are have more active than others lately, like Sabbath Bloody podcast and some of those.
Yeah, it's hard enough keeping up with all the podcasts in the Deep Dive Network, let alone finding time to listen to anything else.
It's a lot. Yeah.
I do enjoy Brandon of Metallicast. That's another great show. That's kind of a cousin show to our network. But yeah, there's definitely some good stuff out there, and our network has grown so much, since it first started up. It's really cool. Let's see here. Where are we at? Michael Vader wants to know, are your households shoes on or shoes off, John?
Off.
Well, you live alone. You can decide for yourself and, how it works there.
No, absolutely. But, and you would figure, much to my dad's chagrin, right? His feet are always cold, but he always bitches about like having to take his shoes off when he comes in here. But I'm like, I don't want you to track stuff all over the floor.
Yeah.
And
You're going to replace my carpet? Yeah. There you go. How about you,
Yes,
Nate?
but it's shoes off.
Yeah, you've got kids, Nate. I would imagine it's shoes off.
It's already been tracked through my house. It's a lost cause, so I don't care. I don't like wearing my shoes. Like when I come home, it's like boom. It's like I put on my soft pants, I put on my slippers. I'm as happy as can be. But my slippers are mostly to protect myself from all the inevitable crumbs and spilled things that my kids have done all over the house. So yeah, I don't care. Like, I don't care if people take their shoes off when they come to my house. Also, our floors are in like really bad shape and need to be redone. So it's like, trust me. I always tell people like, do you want me to take my shoes off? I'm like, whatever's on your shoes is probably only helping our floors at this point. Our floor, I would leave your shoes on to protect yourself from our floors.
Are your slippers Lego proof?
No, sadly. My slippers are. Yeah, my slippers, not my socks.
One of my favorite memes is a picture of a shark coming out of the water with its mouth open as if it's screaming. And somebody said the point where the shark stepped on a Lego for the first time. Like, yeah,
yeah, that's a great way. Like,
yeah, I have done that. I know how fun that is not. Let's see. Another fan of the show, Sabbath fans, wants to know, how do you choose what episodes to do? What dictates in what order they're done? Now, I know that pretty much to an extent, you go kind of chronologically through each band, but you're not going chronologically through time. Like, you didn't cover all the Rainbow albums before you got to Perfect Strangers, but you're doing each band in order of release.
Yeah, and the initial idea for the show was that it would be like 100% chronological. And that went out the window real fast, especially when you get to the spin-off stuff. So yeah, it's like semi-chronological. We kind of like, I like to think of it as we kind of like hang out in a general area, but then there'll be, we'll play some BBC recording from 1969, and then the next episode will be like a Rainbow album from the 80s. So you don't really, I mean, yeah, there's nothing necessarily to dictate it, other than like sometimes we'll just talk about, hey, what do you want to do next? Or, one of us will have an idea or talk about a guest we want to have on. And so yeah, it's pretty loose, other than the fact that there's like you said, we generally do things in the chronological order of the band, and try to. So right now we've been hovering in mostly the 80s for a while now. But yeah, that's not to say that next week couldn't be something from Mark 1 or something. It depends.
Right. And you're one album away from completing Rainbow, which, it dawned on me not too long ago that they only had 8 albums. And it's weird to think that that's all they did, because it seems like their music encompasses such a chunk of my life that there had to have been more than that, but there wasn't.
Yeah, it wasn't too much. And I would say the other part of what we do is, John pretty early on said, was brought up like, hey, like we should mix it up and not just do album after album after album after album so we pretty much, not 100%, but kind of go between like an album this week and then an off topic the next week, and then an album this week and off topic, and then maybe something live, and then back to an album, because it is we love doing the album reviews. But yeah, if you do sometimes we had done like 4, 5, 6 in a row, and you just like it becomes a little formulaic. So I think John made a really good observation about breaking that up, and I think we've done a pretty good job of keeping that broken up for a while now.
And it's great because the variety is fantastic. Around Thursday afternoon, the question will start creeping into my head. I wonder what the Deep Purple podcast is going to be about this week. Because it's not like I can say, okay, they covered Perfect Strangers, now they're going to do House of Blue Light. I don't know what the show is going to be about. And that keeps it really interesting for me as a fan of the show to, find out what I'm going to hear, because I never know.
Yeah. And it's almost a break for us too sometimes, is to do a shorter topic, like something that's going to be an hour and change rather than 2 hours. So like something like this, like just talking is easy, but when you're doing all the songs and the reviews and the rankings, it's a lot of different stuff. So it's nice to have something that's a little bit more, You know, you almost feel like you're getting a week off and you're like, oh, I don't have to review anything this week. Whew.
Yeah.
I don't have to, I
Yeah.
don't have to open the spreadsheet. Thank God.
I don't have to find new adjectives I haven't used on the last 3 shows to describe a song.
Or a patron.
Or pay. Yeah, exactly. So John, aside from ability, just forget about, you know, whether you had the ability to do it or not. Let's just assume you do. If you had a chance to sing one song at the next Butterfly Ball concert, what would it be?
Oh, um, probably. That's tough. You know what? I probably have to go with "Sitting in a Dream" because it's like one of my favorite Ronnie vocals, one of my favorite songs off the album.
Mhm. That's a good choice.
Yeah, I mean that's I got nothing else. It's like it's one of my favorite Ronnie vocals, like, you know, from like his career. So, you know, it's you know, that's saying a lot. But I always just like love listening to it, and it's so mellow and emotional, and you know, it's either that or like I mean, you know, second choice would probably be "Get Ready" with Glenn Hughes.
Another good choice. How about you, Nate?
You know.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, Get Ready was a good one. I mean, wow, all of them, but I don't know. I think Sir Maximus Mouse might be the one I go with, because I think it would be the most in my range. If I could sing like Eddie Hardin, it would be great. But just something. I just love how silly that song is. The whole concept of it is ridiculous, but how Eddie Hardin sings it with such like raw emotion. Like he sings it like it's like a really, like, this is a serious business, guys. It's about a mouse and
Right.
his investments on cheese are really in the tank. It's like it's such a strange song, but he just delivers it so well. Like yeah, I might go with that one.
Yeah, that and Harlequin Hair are probably the two like lyrically silliest songs on the album. You know, they all fit in so well, but we're used to hearing them. But at the same point, it's like, yeah, if you really break down the song itself, it's kind of like, did you actually sit down and write these lyrics? Because they're not like anything else you've ever done, you know.
I mean, Waiting is another one, just so
yeah.
Melodically so great. I mean, yeah, but like honestly, I don't think there's anything on the album I would not want to sing live.
Yeah, I think I would pick not Sitting in a Dream. That would be up there on my list, but probably Behind the Smile.
Yeah.
That's a fun, as short as it is lyrically. And poor David had to write them down to do the Butterfly Ball concert.
Not short enough for Coverdale Live.
Right. You know, but I always enjoyed that one. Let's see.
Hey!
Back to Twitter from Patrick Connor. When do we get the episode on Hotwire?
Ooh, great one. I guess to Patrick, I would say what I say to everybody, which is like, everything's on the table, but we don't really know. So yeah, Hotwire is a great album. Like hearing Trapeze after Glenn Hughes is really interesting. And I really, really dig that album. So I don't know, maybe we'll have to move that a little higher up in the queue. I don't know, but it'd be definitely a fun one to do. But yeah, people constantly send notes in like, would you ever cover this album? It's like, yes, we would cover anything and everything and anything related to Deep Purple. It's just a matter of when or how we're feeling that week. So,
and if you don't have it, getting a copy.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, yeah, that's what a lot of the Patreon money goes to, is, you know, it's not all of the stuff's readily available. If you can get it digitally, great, but usually it's going on Discogs, and luckily a lot of the stuff's pretty inexpensive. Spending $6 or $7 and getting a CD delivered and ripping it and doing an episode.
I had one for Uriah Heep that took me 4 months to get because it wasn't available on Discogs. Well, it was, but it was, for some reason, it was banned for sale. And there was no reason for it. It was a regular studio album. But to find the deluxe edition that had the one bonus track took me about 4 months. And I think I paid $60 for it. So yeah, I know how it goes. Now, was that Peter Golby, the singer on that one?
Yes. Yeah. So there's the Uriah Heep connection.
I thought so. Yeah. Which I don't think we mentioned when we did our crossover episode.
And I think, is Hotwire the one that, I'm trying to think if that is that the one that has the like the American cover, like the German cover is like a naked woman, and then the American cover is like a Volkswagen.
That I don't know.
I'm trying. I know it's like two very different covers.
Let's see. Well, our good friend at Sabbath of Bloody podcast, Rye, wants to know. I'll start with John. Are those Bugle Boy jeans you're wearing?
No.
Are they still in existence? I don't know if they're still a company.
I don't think so.
We were talking about, were we talking about that in like the back channel or something? Because when he said that, I was like, we were talking about Bugle Boy jeans recently.
Yeah, it was in the group Twitter chat for the podcast network.
Maybe that's what it was. Okay. Yes. I'm not wearing Bugle Boys either. Not right now. I'm wearing pajama pants right now. So
I would imagine if there is anyone, it's a very small percentage of anyone in the world right at this moment wearing Bugle Boy jeans. I'm pretty sure they don't exist anymore.
Acid washed Bugle Boy jeans.
They were probably thrifted. Yeah.
And from Twitter, Kev Roberts would like to know a bit about your friendship, where it started, etc. Also, what are your guilty pleasures musically? I mean, not like, kind of stuff you do when the lights are out and everyone's asleep.
Guilty pleasures. Well,
not watching, B movies of B. Arthur that never got released.
Ooh. Oh. Hey-o.
What was it? Stop or My Mom Will Shoot with Sylvester Stallone and Estelle Getty.
Yeah.
Let's start with you on this one, Nate.
Well, our friendship started, I think we've talked about it on the show a few times, but so John went to school with my friend Paul and my cousin Jeff, who lived next door to me. So John would come over and hang out with Jeff, and the day that I got Ozzy's tribute in the mail from Columbia House, John was hanging out with Jeff, and I can't remember, they like came over to like my porch, and I was like, oh, this tribute, and John was like I've never met John, I don't think, in person before. We knew of each other, and he was like, whoa, like he was like muscling. I like, in my memory, he's like pushing me and Jeff aside. Let me take a look at that, because he had like, I think because there was more like liner notes on the CD version, and he had the cassette version. It was probably
CDs were still a new concept to me, so I was like. Yeah.
So we were like,
let me look at a CD.
13, 12, 13, 14. Nah, I'm not that old, probably 12 or 13. And so we kind of, we just instantly connected on music, and, had a lot of crossover in what we liked musically. And then, he'd just be hanging around with my cousin Jeff, or he'd be hanging around with Paul and some of our other friends that, he knew from their high school. So I was kind of like they all kind of adopted me. So like my cousin, you, Erock, Paul, Lynn, Derek, all those people were in the same grade at the same school. I was at a different school and one grade behind them all, but like I was just like, my school sucks and I don't really like any of these people. I don't want to hang out with them. So I would hang out with them, and I just kind of was adopted. Oh, this is Jeff's cousin and Paul's friend, and so we just all hung out all the time, and that's, I think, where it kind of went from there.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I think it was mostly because I got really close with Paul, and Paul was close to you. Like, you guys were like best friends. So I'm just like, so that naturally kind of, it went that way, because he'd just be like, oh, do you mind if Nate comes? And I'd be like, he seems cool. He's got the tribute album. He's got tribute on CD. Album.
He's okay with me.
But how things like that just kind of develop when you become friends with someone else, and they're close to somebody else, and like, hey, you mind if such and such comes along this time? And then, I mean, back then, I mean, now I kind of phrase it as like, if somebody's like, oh, do you mind if such and such comes along? I'm like, well, you're good people. And so, I mean, if you like them, they must be good people too. So that's, I think, kind of, where my mind went at the time, and it did not fail me.
No, worked out pretty well.
I usually ask, is this somebody that you have to bring with you, or somebody you want to bring with you? Because there's a big difference. And man, God bless.
I usually think it's because he wanted to bring Nate.
God bless the days of Columbia House, man. That was such a great deal when you didn't have a lot of money to spend on music. You could get a lot of music for a little bit of money. And I was always trying to find, where's the scam in this, because this just doesn't seem realistic. No. But John, how about your guilty pleasures? Any that you are willing to talk about on the air?
Let me see.
Remember, you may have police that are fans of the show. You don't know.
I
We
do
do.
know.
Oh. All right.
I do
But I don't
know.
think they have any jurisdiction where I am anyway. So
There you go. If you're in
Let me
Providence,
see.
Rhode Island, cover your ears for the next 2 minutes.
I mean, probably like, I mean, it's not it's probably not like a secret that I love sweets, but I will probably eat them more than I'm willing to admit. Um, I have I have like my freezer is like, my fridge is like one of those, the two doors on the top and then the pull out freezer on the bottom. And I have like one shelf that's just dedicated to like just throwing dessert in there. Like anytime I can get my hands on it. Like I have, like right now I have like several pieces of cake, like cookie dough, like a zeppoli from like St. Joseph's Day, like ice cream, like just all sorts of stuff for like when my sweet tooth acts up. So
Wow.
yeah, I have like a freezer full of dessert. And then of course you have those useless like vegetables like on the bottom, like
garbage.
it's like, yeah, sorry, string beans, not today, as I reach for a piece of cake.
Well, that's why the
But I
cake is
mean-
at eye level.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, but I mean, I have that stuff stashed like all around the kitchen. I don't know why I stash it. I'm the only one here, but it's like, but I think it's to like keep myself like, on the straight and narrow in terms of like eating well, because like, I'll have like all the good stuff up in the pantry. And, the other day, along these lines, I went to five different stores to look for Cadbury mini eggs, and they were all out. And I'm just like, all right, this is bullshit. Like, how does this even happen? Like, this is the candy that's like left over for weeks. Right. So, but it turns out that like every CVS has this buy one, get two free deal, So of course everybody's buying them up. So finally I found some and I got a bunch. And so now I have them up there and, I'll grab a couple of eggs out. Cadbury mini eggs are the best. It's a crime. I can only get them this time of year, but they're delicious. And I usually don't like milk chocolate. So,
Yeah, they're the candy corn of Easter.
yeah, except they're actually good. So that's
I like it.
so that's my guilty pleasure that I'm willing or able to divulge on the air.
Fair enough. How about you, Nate?
Well, Kev did ask about musical guilty pleasures, but I will I think we kind of covered that on an earlier question,
Yeah.
sort of. Although I don't really I think the guilty pleasure thing maybe like when you're younger, but like as far as like music and stuff, when I get older, I'm like, I don't give a shit what anybody thinks about. You know what I mean? Like, oh, I was like, are you offended that I like something that I'm not supposed to like? I don't care. But yeah, I mean, I think it probably is kind of the same as what John said. I'm just like, I'm hopeless. Like, like I'm either the whole time we've been recording, I've got some homemade peanut butter and chocolate squares. that
Oh,
are
man.
delicious.
Those are
Yes,
great.
sorry, John. So I've been eating them this whole time. Yeah, like I have a huge sweet tooth. I really, and every day I'm like, I should really stop and cut back, and then I don't. So I don't know. Hopefully I don't die as a result, but yeah, it's the sweets really get me every time. But
Do you have to compete with your kids to get a hold of the sweets quite a bit?
usually the stuff that they're really into, I don't really care that much about. So it's like it works out pretty well. Like like for some odd reason they're not that into these, so screw them. I just eat them all.
There you go. I'm waiting for the episode where you guys are just like talking, then you suck on a ring pop while the other one's talking, or you're listening to the song.
Yeah, see, usually for me it's like it has to be chocolate though, like chocolate related. I'm with John. I don't really care too much for milk chocolate, but in a Cadbury egg, I'll make an exception.
Oh yeah. Well, that's a given.
So now wait a minute. Was the original question about musical guilty pleasures?
It was,
Yeah.
but we kind of talked about that. I think we kind of
talked
covered
about
that
it
a little bit
earlier when you
earlier.
talked about what kind of music we listen to that people would be surprised
by, yeah.
which is probably
Oh,
that
okay.
I would agree. But like as far as being a guilty pleasure, I don't feel any guilt about liking anything.
Yeah, I
necessarily.
think I agree with you at this point. We're past that. What you were talking about before, like liking rap and hip hop, and then having to denounce it for fear of like people thinking you're being a poser, or like that
Yeah.
like
You can't possibly
feel
like
like
two
those-
things. I mean, it's impossible.
I feel like those days are over, at least when you get to be our age. It's just like, I'll say that I like anything. Like, it might surprise people, but I don't like listen to it in secret and then not tell anybody. Just I
Yeah.
think people will be like, oh, so kind of shocked maybe.
Well, John, that's why you stay off Twitter, because you don't get to see those battles of, if you could only listen to one of these bands, or what song is better than this other song, or, you can't like this if you, I mean, there's so many of those things that I just hate even logging in for.
Yeah.
So let me ask you guys this, and I'll start with you, John. If you guys were knowing everything that you know now after doing the show for 3 years, that's a lot of episodes under your belt. If you were starting another podcast today, would you do anything differently?
I mean, the only thing that I can think of is that if we knew everything then that we know now, is probably just being more prepared, or having more of a format going into it. Because, as much as you say the same thing as I would probably say about my favorite podcast, like, oh, it's great to hear the formative episodes or whatever. It's just that kind of perfectionist in me would just be like, oh, it would have been great if we knew all this to begin with. Like when we started, like the first, I don't know, however many episodes were like on my laptop with like no microphone, like nothing. And then Nate's like, you need some real equipment. Because when I when I bought my laptop, I don't even know how, it might have been actually recently, or within the year before that, I didn't know I was going to be doing any of this. So it's just like, and now I have, not as much of a setup as Nate, but definitely, more than I did when we started. So it's like, it would have been nice to have known like what the investment was going to be, and just have like, kind of good equipment and, that kind of preparation going into it. So we didn't look so amateurish.
Well, and it's fun if you go back and listen to some of those early episodes, and you can hear the difference in the sound quality that's coming from your channel. It's you've really made a lot of improvements to make it sound even better. So, how about you, Nate? What would you do differently, or if anything, I should say?
Yeah, on my end, not much has changed equipment wise. I think I got a new audio interface, but that's kind of only for me. Nobody listening would really notice the difference. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think it's fine, because I think the cool thing about a podcast is anybody can start it at any time. You could just be talking into your phone and do a podcast. And yeah, like, I think you want to achieve some level of professionalism, or sound quality, of course. And I think I don't think we took too long to get into a format where the sound quality was of an acceptable level. I listen to some podcasts sometimes, and I'm like, wow, I can't believe how bad this sounds, or how just and it's usually and the thing is, the difference between a really horrible sounding podcast and the best sounding podcast, even then, is not huge. Like, technology is such now that anyone can do this pretty cheaply and without a ton of gear. So the way I do it, I think, is probably overcomplicated as far as how much I do with like multi-tracking and all this sort of stuff. But I mostly do that because, talking about being a perfectionist, I want to make sure if like I can isolate things if there's any issues and all that. But yeah, I mean, I don't know if there's much I would do differently on that end.
I think I'm with you. I overcomplicate things, and I think it's just that audio engineer in me.
Yep.
Because it's like, well, I can separate it, so I should separate it, so I have to separate it.
Yeah, so many people just record like everything live to I think that's how Pot of Thunder does it. They just record everything live, no edits.
Yeah.
Whatever the conversation is, live to one single file, and that like freaks me out to even think about.
Oh,
What if something happens? We can't insulate it, like. But hey, like, they're doing fine. You know what I mean? I think that's the kind of thing. It's there's so many people that do have so much fewer bells and whistles than we do, and everything's fine for them. So it's not a big deal.
Yep, you're probably right on that. Jumping over to Facebook.
I just stopped it for 1 second. I'm gonna start it right back up.
Did you want me to stop?
Okay. Nope, we're good.
Okay. Jumping over to Facebook, we have Norman Weichelsbaum. I hope I'm saying that right. I was close. Sorry, Norman.
The one who's who I have as his record collection.
Oh, nice.
From Austria.
And just remember, Norman, I apologized earlier in the show for not pronouncing your name right.
Before you even said it.
This kind of touches on something that we've already talked about. You've been in a band together, right? Any recordings? Let us hear you rock. So there's another vote for hearing. The pressure's on Nate. I can see it in his eyes. So
We'll have to think of, well, maybe we could tack something on the end here or something. I don't know. We have to figure out what we wanted to do. Any songs that you can think of, John, that you'd want to tack on the end of here?
No.
I think we have done it before. We've done a few bits and pieces before where we've stuck on some things a couple times.
Yeah.
I mean, the end of an episode or something.
It's been a while since I heard any of our old stuff, so I don't even know how good it is.
Well, and you have to remember that now you're looking back through the eyes of more experience too. When you look back at your older stuff, you don't think of it as good as it was at the time.
Oh yeah.
You know, so obviously a proper introduction of, okay, well, we were 18 when we did this, or we were, you know, this was just a demo or whatever usually helps. Not that people are ever judgmental. Staying on Facebook, we've got Adrian Hernandez who wants to know, what references do you use when researching artists in upcoming episodes, like old Kerrang magazines, biographies, etc.?
Yeah, I mean, kind of all of that. I think, you know, I've got a bunch of Deep Purple books behind me that, you know, that we use depending on what the episode's about. And reach out. Jeff Bryce is a tremendous resource. So I can say to him, hey, we're thinking to do an episode on this. What do you have on it? And he'll send me scans from Darker Than Blue and all that sort of stuff that are relevant to that episode. So he's been a huge help. Jorg Planer has been another huge help. If all I have to do is say, at this point, I'm just like, hey, Jorg, this album by Whitesnake. And then he'll have a file over to me by the, you know, in an hour of every newspaper clipping and ad and album cover and article and review. And he's one of the most amazing archivists in the world. So yeah, those are generally, other than the mains, you know, Google searches, Deep Purple Appreciation Society, whatever, anything you can find, basically. Some of it gets used, some of it doesn't. It's usually fun reading the reviews. The contemporary reviews are pretty fun. Yeah, any sort of backgrounds on what's going on with the bands, anyone that's got a biography, all of that, I guess.
Yeah, that would certainly make sense. I mean, the thing I always run into is just the things that contradict all the other things. Like you Google search something and you'll see an article that says one thing and then somebody else wrote, that's not what happened. It happened this way. And I get really frustrated with that. So viable resources are always helpful for any podcast.
There was one recent episode, I must have been Slaves and Masters, where we had Ritchie's interviews about the time, Ian's biography, and then Colin Hart's, which told like so that you're sharing the same story from all three of them, two of them that were involved in the scuffle and one that was observing it. So it's interesting to compare the three.
Yeah, and that was definitely an interesting time in Purple's career, for sure. Let's see. Chris Forrestal wants to know, let's see here. What is your favorite live album across all lineups? And I am saying Made in Japan, although Live 70 to 72 and Abandoned Tour 1999 are pretty damn good too. Now, I'm trying to remember if that was the one that had Fools on it or not, the ever lingering controversy between me and Roger Glover of the song Fools. It was either that or it was Perihelion. I can't remember, which was recorded, I think, in Florida, interestingly enough. Let's see, John, what would you say? I know which one you're going to say, but what would you say your favorite live album is?
Right now, I'd say it's Made in Europe.
Really?
Yeah.
I thought you were going to say Live 72.
Well, I mean, if you're talking about like live performance that's released, then yeah, the Denmark 72 is definitely up there. But I mean, like I thought we were talking about like live albums.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
I mean,
yeah,
right. But I mean, yeah, it's hard to pick because like I think the Denmark 72 show, which was, you know, I got my first copy of it was on VHS before I think they released it theatrically, like on DVD, years later, is like one of my favorites, like next to California Jam. But if you're talking about like record releases, like, Made in Europe is definitely, as short as it is, has some of my favorite songs on it. So
yeah, and it's such a great performance. You can't argue that it's not a good live album. What about you, Nate?
Man, it's hard. Like, I mean, obviously Made in Japan is an obvious choice for probably most people. I think I might go with like California Jam, because it was released as a live album, although watching it to me is more entertaining. But yeah, I'm not a huge live album guy. So yeah, I mean, what the Rings of a Russian Foxtrot that we just did was a great soundboard recording. Yeah, it's hard to pick just one across all of those different lineups. I guess I'm going to go with California Jam just to be different.
I think that the thing with Purple live, as opposed to a lot of other bands, is that so much of what they did on stage was really spontaneous. It was that musicianship that they had and that musical camaraderie that made them such a great live band, as opposed to bands that, and they did this on some things where they just came out and played the song, in a different way that made it more interesting. But Purple was very much you got to be paying attention to everything, otherwise you're going to get lost in the song very easily. And I think that's what made them one of the greatest live bands that I'm aware of.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if so we're getting up there, so I don't know if there's anyone else that maybe I don't think we got to even half of these questions.
I know.
But yeah, I don't know if there's anything else if there's anyone else that maybe didn't get a question asked that we could ask a question from, and just to make sure everyone gets some representation.
We got a couple people left here. There's two questions from Simon Berglund. One, I think he's actually posing as Jen, because he's asking, how long do you plan to do the podcast? I think that's just Jen trying to get you from another angle to see if your answer would
so
change.
That's who Simon is.
So
I guess the quick answer is we don't know how long. Like,
yeah,
we don't have a planned end date. It's just until I don't know.
As long as you're vertical.
I mean, I can't think of any reason why we would stop. I guess
as long as we feel like it. Yeah,
until it stops being fun, I guess.
Yeah, that's it. Because if it's not fun, why would you do it?
Right.
But he also asks, are there any other bands that you would feel like doing a podcast about? Like let's say it ended and you had free time. Is there anybody else that you'd want to say, hey, you know what? Let's pick up this band now?
I don't know, John. What do you think?
Oh boy. I mean, I don't have any ideas or any angles to come at it with that aren't already being done or original. But I mean, I would love to be part of a Kiss podcast, obviously, because I love them. But like starting up my own, I mean, there's really very few stones unturned out there. Like, being like, maybe like the way that we did on your show, Scott, is like, talking about them, or if I was invited to be on like either a Kiss podcast or like a special episode, just to kind of pick my brain about my knowledge or my take on them, that would be fun. But I mean, if I came up with a new angle or something different, that would definitely be of interest to me.
Yeah, I could see that. How about you, Nate?
I mean, when I started this, there was a few that kind of popped up early on where I was like, I thought about doing one about Pink Floyd would be really cool. I don't know. Haven't even, there must be Pink Floyd podcasts out there. I haven't even searched for it. Beatles, I wouldn't even consider, because like John said about Kiss, like there's, I don't know, 100 Beatles podcasts out there probably. And unless you could think of a really, when you're doing a band like Kiss or the Beatles that have so many other podcasts, you have to have an angle, right? You can't just be like with Deep Purple, our podcast, like, hey, we're just doing a podcast with Deep Purple. We can do whatever we want. It doesn't matter. But with, the Beatles, if you could come up with a really good angle, something that set yourself apart from the other shows that would entice people to want to listen to it, then I would be down for it. Other than that, I can't think of any angle. I have talked with another member of the Deep Dive Podcast Network about doing a Frank Zappa podcast. We have a name for the podcast, have a logo, have a website for it. But I'm too scared about getting sued by the Zappa family. They're just so litigious. I mean, they're suing Dweezil for using the Zappa name. His freaking last name is Zappa. So what chance would we stand? So pretty much the main thing I think would be a lot of fun. We've got a great idea for it and a great angle that I think would be really cool, but it probably will never happen. And then the other part of it is like, I don't think I would have the bandwidth to put behind another, unless I quit my job to put behind another, another weekly podcast.
I would say I would love to hear that, though. Zappa would be really interesting to cover.
Might have to be on the dark web. So, my name is Bathan Nodri.
No one will ever figure you out.
Yeah, exactly.
And because of that, I've actually decided to sue myself for the Haskin Cast podcast. I hope I win. I feel good about my chances.
Yeah, watch out for some litigious family members you might have. Right. You can't use Haskin. What are you doing?
Dear God. So coming down to our last two questions. This I think is a really important one too. On Instagram, Fexo wants to know how much work is behind one episode. Who edits? Who makes the episode picture covers? I'm going to start with you, Nate.
I make the picture covers. What is John saying?
Nate does all of it.
For those of you that are just listening on the audio only feed, John's just pointing at Nate's picture.
I make the picture the stuff in Photoshop, which just kind of started as like, I don't even know why I did it, and then now I'm like, oh God, I've got to make a new one for every episode. But it's one of those things that I've done it so many times now that I can throw one together in 10 minutes and it's fine. Like, so it's not a big deal. As far as behind the episode, it's such a science now. Like, so as Scott mentioned earlier, I did the thing where you release a new song every day in January. It's called January. But I once did that for 500 straight days where I released a new song every single day. And the process of doing that is the same. While it's a bigger format, it's the same as doing a podcast. So right now I'm not playing any instruments. I'm doing it. It's just recording. So when it's done, John sends me his stuff that he's recording on his end. I plop it right into there, so that we've got a better quality of his voice in the show. Sometimes I have to cut things just a little bit up, and then usually put a funny thing at the end. So it takes maybe 20 minutes these days to just edit the recording the episode takes the longest, to another 20 minutes to do it. And then I start rendering the file, and then the next day or whatever, I just upload it with the show notes. So then before that is just kind of whatever, we've got a template for our show notes, and then I just plop in whatever album we're doing, and if there's a new patron, and then whatever things I've gotten from interviews. So it's really not that much. It's just, and it's fun to do. So like sometimes like on the side of my bed at home, I'll have like 5 books stacked up with bookmarks in them, and I'll just like, oh, that's an interesting fact, and I'll like write something down or whatever. But yeah, I mean, again, it wouldn't do it if it wasn't fun.
Yeah, absolutely. And then you forgot the step where you wait to see if your episode got banned on YouTube because it's some obscure album that not everybody knows, and then you have to make a video explaining that you got banned on YouTube.
Yeah, that's usually just like that morning or whatever. I'm like, hey, there's no video now, so check it out on whatever. And yeah, that takes an additional 30 seconds.
Right. Exactly. So I think we should finish up with this question. Now, the album, who do we think we are? The concept of that was basically because there were people that were writing and going, who do you think you are doing this kind of stuff? Have you guys had any fans? Like, who was your loudest fan complaining about the show, or saying like, who are you to do a podcast on Deep Purple? John, do you remember?
We definitely know who our loudest fan is.
Yeah, but I mean, like complaining, like somebody that doesn't like us doing it.
Yeah, I mean, I have people writing and complaining about things on both of my shows, but I mean, has there been anybody that's been like really out loud and obtuse? I know there was one guy that kind of stalked me a little bit on a Twitter post that Nate said you guys knew. Have you had any experiences like that?
I mean, I don't know. I don't think so. Nate?
I think for the most part, the fans have been great. There's been a few people who are just like, I don't think there's been one person that stands out that I can remember. And generally my kind of philosophy is if somebody is like just bringing negativity, I just completely ignore it. I don't respond. I don't answer their question, or usually not a question. It's just whatever. It's stupid. Or there's been a few people I know that were like on some of our YouTube videos, like, these guys don't know anything. I know a lot more. And it's like, okay. And then I just ignore it and nobody responds to it. Because if I don't respond to it, nobody's going to respond to it, because who else would give a crap where we don't have enough people, especially on YouTube. So then it just kind of, to me, that's just the greatest thing. Oh, it just fades away into the ether and nobody ever sees it or thinks about it again for the rest of their lives. So why give them the satisfaction of responding? But for the most part, the Deep Purple folks are just great. They're all supportive, and even if they know way more than we do, which often is the case, they try to help us, and tell us what we missed, and or help us get information we need or whatever. And there's been a lot of great people we've met along the way as a result. But yeah, I mean, thankfully, this, like I said, there's been a few people who just have been negative, but it's not, luckily I think we're in a sweet spot where it's not a band that's so big that you're going to get a lot of loudmouths like that. People are a little bit, have a more higher maturity level, so we don't really see a lot of that. You're not getting your 15, 16-year-old. If this is a band that 15, 16-year-olds listen to, we'd be crucified every single episode.
Probably,
and probably
yeah.
had death threats and every other thing. But people are more
Well,
mellow about this band.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that we're in a unique position too, because there are no other podcasts that like just do what we're doing, like just do Deep Purple. That's where we started it, first of all. And second of all, is like we agreed like in the beginning that we were just going to stay away from like really hot topics. You know what I mean? Like we weren't, like if we got any like of those kind of comments or whatever, we weren't going to, like there are some podcasts that just like absolutely roast these people. They're just like, okay, Purple fan 7201, it's like you wrote this and and if you don't like it, then you don't have to listen. And it's like, what even good is that? It's just like, so we just agreed that we weren't going to really do any like hot takes or be inflammatory about anything. Like we don't like talk about like we just try not to be controversial. You know what I mean? Like to the point where it would be like, and everybody gets all riled up, because it's not really what we're interested in doing anyways. We're here because we, want to have fun and, talk about the music. And when we have guests on who are usually friends, it's just like a big hangout, and it's, and I mean, there are always going to be people online that, have these, hot takes, or are going to say, oh, these blowhards don't know anything, and it's just like Nate said, you just ignore it. It goes away. Who cares anyway?
Yeah, I think the best thing you could do for them would be to engage. And that's why I just have a strict policy. And I'm usually not even tempted to engage. There was only one time I could think of engaging with somebody, because they were it was about the grammar that I had used in a post. And they told me, remember that, John?
Oh, I
the
can't
only
remember.
time I ever
Yes,
engage with anybody. So he told me basically what I wrote was grammatically incorrect. So I was like, okay. So I sent him
I remember,
a link to the what it was, like the style guide, the AP style guide that says how you are supposed to use that particular type of grammar, which showed that I was using it correctly. And he responded and was like, well, they're wrong too. I was like, okay, buddy. The AP style guide is wrong.
Right,
I'm wrong, but you're right. Cool. And then I just left it at that. But the only reason I engaged in that, because it wasn't about the band or us being stupid, or, well, kind of about us being stupid. But other than that, like, yeah, all they want is for you to engage with them. And I just feel like, to me, the best thing you can possibly do is no matter how much you want to respond, you just don't. It just fades away, and they didn't get what they wanted. So it's, there's just no point in engaging in that sort of nonsense, because it's, a lot of times it's like, wow, that album sucks. All right, I don't care what you think about that album. Like, so I just don't respond.
Yeah.
If somebody, because I post stuff all the time on Twitter, like, oh, this album, it could be an album I'm not even crazy about. This album was released on this day. Oh, cool. And people are like, yeah, I love it. And I'm like, I don't really love it, but I don't say anything, because I'm not about, here's my opinion about it. It's just like, hey, let's celebrate something related to Deep Purple. And then people always feel the need to chime in and say that album sucks. It's like, well, fine, then don't say anything. Don't listen to the album. Like, I'm just trying to present information to get people talking and get people united about Deep Purple. I'm not trying to hear your take about why that album sucks.
When I first started the Magicians podcast, we had posted a link to, I think we had tagged magicians or something in there incorrectly. We had tagged the actual magicians, like people that go out and perform magic. I know what it was. It was it was a post that was done on my behalf. Magicians. Yeah, it was a podcast about magicians. And they complained about the grammar, because they said they don't even know how to spell magicians right. It's S apostrophe. And I'm like, well, we're only talking about one magician, so it's apostrophe S. I didn't say anything. I didn't respond to him. I just let the person know that posted it on my behalf that, hey, this is the wrong tag. Use this one. It was on Twitter, so they just used the wrong, @ But I was like, really, you guys just assume that it's about you, and if someone's infringing on your territory, how dare they, But I'm like, yeah, it's, what can you do? People are going to be people. If you put yourself out there, and you know this from putting music out there, from doing anything that relates to anything that can have an opinion formed, putting it out to the public, that there's going to be people coming out of the woodwork and saying whatever they're going to say. But you're right. I mean, not engaging in it is really the best way to handle it. Let the fire die out on its own.
Yep, because it's what they want, and it's just they want to have a back and forth and a fight, and you're just not going to give it to them, and it's like, you win. Like, it's the best thing you can possibly do.
Exactly. Well, thank you guys for letting me interview. I had a great time. We had some great questions from people, and this has been a lot of fun. And once again, 3 years, not one episode missed. Every one of them highly entertaining and informational. Thank you guys for all that you've done for us, because you guys have been a key to helping people through the pandemic, through all this nonsense, and it's been kind of an anchor for a lot of people.
Yeah, well, thank you for doing this. I really appreciate it, and always appreciate your friendship and your camaraderie and all of this. And hey, before we get out of here, we of course have to do something, which is to thank our foundation level patrons. We'd be remiss if we did not do that. So coming in at the $3.33 halfway to evil tier, we have Raf Calf. At the $3 Nobody's Perfect tier, Peter Gardeau, Ian DeRosier, Mark Roback, Duncan Leask, Stuart McCord, Flight of the Rat Bat Blue Light, Ivan Fieldboo. It's a great life in the Norwegian. And Runar Simonson. It's a great life in the Norwegian. Then, of course, hey-oh, new patron John Kynes. Thank you so much. At the $1 made up name tier, we have the 3 years of Drippy Tombs, Leaky Mausoleum, Stephen Somerville, the Concerto 1999 Fanatic, Spike the Rock Cat, JJ Stenard, Hank the Tank, Private Eyes, Ashen Lionel, Sugar Tits, and Blackmore's Tights. Thank you so much to all of you. Really appreciate your support of the show. One thing I do have to, Ivan did write in and ask what that song was that we play for our Norwegian patrons. And I do have to say, he asked if that was an original composition. It is not. You'll have to go back to the James Gang Bang episode to see the genesis of that. The song is called Ride the Wind by the James Gang, and John thought that that's what they said was, it's a great life if you're Norwegian. And that was one of the funniest things I'd ever heard in my life. We had a really big laugh about it. Probably one of the reasons I remember that episode so fondly. And then we decided to add that into our call outs for them. So Ivan, that's a last minute answer to your question.
Misheard lyrics are some of the greatest things in the world.
Oh, heck yeah.
It really is. Yeah, it's almost, yeah, it's like, but the real words are, it's a great life if you don't weaken. Not as good as Norwegian. All right, Scott, thank you so much for moderating this for us. We really appreciate it. Sorry we didn't get to every question. Otherwise, it would be like a 5-hour show. But maybe we could save some of these for the next 4-year show. We can answer the rest of them or some of them. Yeah, thanks guys. I appreciate it. And yeah, I guess we'll see you all next week.
Okay.
And you may or may not hear a piece of music from Nate and John after this.
Yeah, we'll see about that. I'll have to keep in touch with John and send him some rough mixes. All right.
Yeah,
Later,
I have final approval.
Cheers, guys.
Right. Bye, guys.
All right, bye.
Thank you for listening to the Deep Purple Podcast. If you like what you hear and would like more episodes in the future, please donate on Patreon to support the show. You can also leave us a review in Apple Podcasts to help new people discover the show. You can follow us on YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook for show updates. See deeppurplepodcast.com for more details. Thank you for listening.